Check before you travel. That's the advice as rail services are severely disrupted in the latest bout of industrial action.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Saturday the 30th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online. So whatever you're up to today, you can take us out and about with you.
Here are your top stories. Train drivers at 7 operators across the country walk out for 24 hours over pay. The strike is expected to impact those travelling to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and football fans attending their first games of the season.
A housing revolution. Liz Truss pledges to help millions of renters buy their first home. The Tory leadership contender wants rental payments included in assessments for mortgages. She's promised that if she becomes Prime Minister.
Put your hose pipe away. Around 17 million Brits could be facing fines of up to £1,000 if they use their hose pipe to water the garden, wash the car or fill up a swimming pool, as the first restrictions were brought in by Southern Water. The company says high demand and dry rivers has led to the decision.
And it's Win Rooney, Colleen's court victory over Rebecca Vardy. We've finally reached the climax of this Wagatha saga, so we'll look at what both characters do next.
Win Rooney. I've only just got that. Do you get that?
Win Rooney. Oh,
Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney.
Very clever.
I just thought it was a football league.
Good work, whoever wrote that.
I don't know.
As ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I must be a bit slow on the uptake with my nana was
As you
called
said
Win,
it.
though, so I just think of Win as a... Yeah.
Win as in Winnie.
Winnie.
That's a lovely name. Lovely, lovely. No, as you said it, I thought that was very clever.
She hated it, actually, Winifred.
I think that's lovely.
If you're called Winifred, get in touch with this one. I always thought it was a nice name, but she never liked
nice.
it.
Yep. We're talking about Wagatha Christie today. Do you think it's a complete waste of time? Is it a complete waste of money? It's all over the papers, though.
Their money to lose, though, isn't it?
It is true.
They reckon it's cost Rebecca Vardy 400 grand and Colleen Rooney 200 grand. Was that the figure?
No, you're way out.
That's what it says.
Between the two of them, 3 million.
No.
Estimated, yeah.
And
obviously, no damages have been awarded. I was there, Stephen. I was outside the court.
Yes, you were.
Talking to the woman in the know.
They said, no, does Rebecca Vardy not have to pay Colleen's costs or anything?
No, it wasn't in the judgment, no. Oh. Well, it's going to be interesting now to see if Rebecca Vardy appeals at all, because she has said she's really not very happy with the decision. But Colleen has said she never wanted to go to court. She thinks it's a waste of money, a waste of time in the cost of living crisis, which I think a lot of people wanted to hear, actually. And she's just happy that it's put to bed. So hopefully that's the end of it. But there are going to be films, there's going to be documentaries, there's going to be dramas. It's not the end of this story. It's going to be everywhere.
No. Oh, also, get in touch this one. Did you watch the last Neighbours yesterday?
I didn't. But you did.
I watched it, actually, because I was asleep when it was on. Sorry. I watched it on YouTube. But it was an hour long, so I didn't watch the whole thing. I just skipped through till the bits where I recognised people. And the storyline was awful. I mean, it was just like suddenly everyone turns back up. But do you know what? It was nice.
Oh, good. So it was nostalgic.
And they played loads of stuff from back in the day when I remember it. And so it was actually quite nice. And Kylie and Jason and Mike and Plain Jane and little clips of Mrs. Mangle and all that. It was nice.
And did you cry?
No.
Oh. I have heard lots of people have cried at Neighbours. I've heard it's very, very emotional. And we're also talking about the train strike as well. Are you trying to get somewhere today? Maybe you're going to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, football games as well. Season started today. Do let us know if that's affected your journey. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, and if you are thinking of travelling anywhere, you're being warned to brace for severe disruption all weekend long. Actually, it's going to be felt tomorrow as well, as railway workers across Britain go on the most widespread strike since privatisation in 1996.
Yes, members of the ASLEF union will stop work for 24 hours at 8 train operators, with some 5,500 staff walking out after talks broke down over pay.
Now, the strike comes, as we were saying, as Birmingham hosts the first weekend of the Commonwealth Games. It is the new football season as well. Let's talk to Steve Headley, former RMT Assistant General Secretary. Good to see you this morning. Now, obviously, this is an ASLEF strike that we're talking about, rather than the union that you used to represent. But even so, people are fed up to the back teeth with this. aren't they? The punters?
I think everybody's fed up to their back teeth with what's going on in this country. We've got inflation rampant. We've got energy prices going through the roof. We've got unrestricted profit taken by these energy giants. People haven't had a pay rise in nearly 3 years. Their standard of living has gone down by 20% in real terms. And people have had enough, and that's what we're having, people going on strike. And I just hope it becomes a generalised strike wave.
You think there should be a general strike?
Yes, absolutely.
But what's the potential outcome of this? Because there is no way that people can get a pay rise on top of inflation across the board.
Well, why not? We have
because that would push inflation through the roof.
OK, but that was a rhetorical question. The actual driver of inflation is not wages. Wages have been suppressed, really, for the best part of a decade, in the public sector at least. What's driving inflation is profiteering companies. If you look at the FTSE top 100 companies, the top 100, they have a record 70% paid out extra in dividends. If you look at the energy companies, one of them, 1.3 billion in the first 6 months of this year. That's up 500% on the entire profit that they made last year. So the myth that wages are driving inflation is just wrong. We've got the energy companies, you've also got the war in the Ukraine, you've got the backlog of the supply crisis during COVID, the supply chain crisis. So inflation is rampant, not because of wages. And of course, if inflation goes up, people's wages have to go up to equal that. We've also had in this past 30 years, and you can check this out, I'm not just making this up, we've had the largest redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich as a percentage of gross domestic product of the nation's wealth. And it's got to stop, it's got to be reversed. And people will just not sit there and let their homes become cold because they can't heat them, because they've got no gas. And people will say, well, the gas company can't cut you off. Well, they can, because people using cards and key meters are cut off when the meter runs out. People won't sit there and let that happen. They won't sit and let the lights go off. They won't sit and let grannies freeze to death in the winter, because we've got profiteering companies. And the answer is quite simple. The government have to legislate. The government have to nationalise these companies, like France has just done with EDF. And they've got to make sure that this inflation crisis is brought under control.
Steve, what would be reasonable to you? Because there have been discussions, there have been offers on the table. I mean, you're talking about the rate of inflation there. So is what you'd be looking at 10% pay rises across the board? And then if that's what you're looking for, where would that come from? Is that from the profits of the company?
Well, I have to say, right, I think the trade unions have been absolutely too reasonable. They've gone in demanding an inflation pay rise, and it's an April date, which is 7%. And inflation's already 9.2, predicted to be 11 by the end of the year. That's on top of a 2-year pay freeze. So, I mean, I have to say, I kind of smell a rat, because if you go in asking for 7%, you're probably going to end up with lower than that. I don't know why the unions have done that. I don't know why they've done that
the
at all.
The RNT was offered 8%.
No,
wasn't it? Yes, they were.
That's just not true. When? What are you talking about?
Well, we interviewed. I can't remember his name. Who's the boss? He was on the show a couple of days ago and said they were offered 8%, but with Mick Lynch. So they were offered 8%.
To do what?
That was the pay settlement they were offered in these negotiations. They were offered 8%, but what they didn't like were the terms and conditions attached to it.
Oh, no. Well, they weren't offered a straight 8% by any means. What they were offered was about 3%, and the rest came with strings like job cuts, smashing up terms and conditions, putting people out of work.
New contracts were part of the deal.
Well, new contracts, and what that would mean, they would get rid of thousands of staff, and the people that were left over would have to pick up all the terrible shift patterns that would necessitate. So their work-life balance would be absolutely hammered. Then you would have allowances taken away. So we'd be giving them one hand and taking away with the other. So I mean, if they offered a straight 8%,
well, it was 8% over 2 years.
Well, that's 4% then, isn't it?
Well, no, but no.
That's 4%.
No, but you're talking an 8% rise within 2 years. That's what it works at. That's what it works at, and that's how Mick Lynch phrased it.
But that's a pay cut. But that's a pay cut.
Well, it's a pay cut
in real terms.
But what's interesting in all of this, and some people may say, look, you're making valid points, right? But all of our viewers and listeners who get in touch, the vast majority are against these strikes. Now, they, like everybody else, the vast majority of people, have also taken this 20% pay cut in real terms that you talk about for your members. They've had it. They still don't support the strikes.
Well, to be quite honest, I don't think that your views are quite representative of the British public, to be quite honest. You know, not many people get up and sing God Save the Queen and stand like that every morning in front of the TV. But the reality is this, the people out there need to raise their expectations. Every worker out there deserves a pay rise. Every worker should be getting at least inflation for this year, because they've already had a 2-year pay freeze. Some in the private sector haven't. They've had, little bits of money here and there, but it hasn't kept pace with inflation. And we have to educate people that workers can't be keeping paying for the mistakes of the bosses and the mistakes of the government. The government have exacerbated the COVID crisis. The government have let inflation become rampant. They've got to pay the bills, and they can do that quite easily. They can nationalise the utilities, the gas, the electric, the oil companies, and they can put that money into the exchequer and use it for the good of everybody in the country.
We can't. To be fair, on nationalisation, it's not that straightforward, is it? You've got to. You don't just take it back. You've got to buy it back.
Well, why? Nobody compensated the British public when they privatised it, did they? Nobody came up to Jack Jones living down my street and said, "Here, we've just sold off your public utility. Here's 50 quid." That didn't happen.
Well, no, but it went into the public coffers, didn't it?
Well, did it? I never seen it.
Of course it did. It went into the exchequer, and therefore gets used.
They can put out diktats that can nationalise Russian companies, seize Russian companies. Why can't they do it with the gas companies and electric companies?
Well, that's not how it works, is it? I mean,
it's worked with Russian companies. Why doesn't it work? They're parliament. They're supposed to be a sovereign body that runs this country. They can pass a law to do anything they want.
But that would be
the will isn't there.
But that would be taking money away from shareholders, wouldn't it?
That would be taking money away from the rich and giving it to the poor. Yes, that's exactly what we want.
Well, except not all shareholders are rich. I mean, don't forget, when they sold these companies off, anyone could buy shares. You don't have to be rich to buy shares in British Gas or whatever it was.
That was 30 years ago when people bought their 2 quid shares or whatever. That's all gone now. We all know multinational corporations run all these companies, be it the former British Gas, the electric, EDF, all of them. And some of them have actually got their national government have got shares in them, like EDF. You know, that's been taken up by the French. So if the French can do it, if other countries can do it, why can't Britain do it?
Well, there you go. Fair question. Steve, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. What do you think? gbviews@gbnews.uk. Would love to hear your thoughts this morning.
Yes, let's bring you up to date with what's going on today. The former Tory leadership contender, Tom Tugendhat, has endorsed Liz Truss in the race to be Prime Minister in a huge blow to Rishi Sunak. Writing in The Times, Mr Tugendhat said that the Foreign Secretary's promises of tax cuts are based on true Conservative principles and that she can unite the party.
French and UK border forces promising to improve delays across the Channel ahead of a busy weekend. Travellers could face 2-hour delays at Dover in the coming days, so 2 hours seems pretty good compared to what we saw last weekend. Tens of thousands of cars were gridlocked last weekend, as we saw. Authorities blamed a shortage of French border officers and a car crash on the M20.
Rail services are expected to be disrupted today as members of the drivers' union ASLEF engage in a 24-hour strike. The industrial action is affecting train operators such as Great Western Railway, Greater Anglia and LNER, among others.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the deaths of dozens of prisoners in a Russian-held jail showed there should be clear legal recognition that Russia was a state sponsor of terrorism. The US has so far resisted the push to label Russia as a terrorist state.
PM hopeful Liz Truss has vowed to unlock home ownership if she is made Prime Minister. She said she would break down barriers by helping renters prove they're ready to take on a mortgage.
Now, according to the government, more than half of today's renters could afford the monthly cost of a mortgage, but various constraints mean only 6% could immediately gain access.
Oh, we're joined now by property expert Kunle Barker. Good morning to you, Kunle. Thank you so much for joining us. So we just heard there from Stephen, many people are keeping up with their rental monthly outgoings.
Yeah.
That's often more than a mortgage, isn't it? But there are restraints as to why people can't actually get a mortgage.
Yeah, because the way that mortgages or mortgage acceptances are calculated take into account lots of other things. But of course, the most important thing is, can you afford to pay it? Now, if you're paying a rent which is higher, then it makes sense that you can afford to pay for a mortgage. Now, obviously, the mortgage company has to make sure that its investment, that its loan is secure. So they take into account lots of other things. But there are different ways of doing that. Intergenerational mortgages, you can let parents or other family members allow their income to be counted as well. So this is an interesting idea by the government.
I mean, it's been around for a while, though,
Yeah.
hasn't it? I mean, it's not new as an idea to take rental payments into account. It's just a case of making it, I guess, more widespread.
Yeah, but of course, yeah, it's not new and it doesn't go far enough. I mean, it's kind of soundbite politics, really. It's all about this leadership race. I mean, the real problem is that we don't have enough housing stock. So really, if I was advising the government, I'd be saying to them that you've got two things to think about. One is, how do we solve the issue right now? And that's, I think, probably intergenerational mortgages, guaranteed maybe lifetime low interest rates for key workers to make sure that they can get onto the housing market. They can have mortgages that last for 40 years or so that they can then pass those on to their children. Because we're in danger of getting into this almost feudal system.
But how secure is that for the banking sector, though? Because it's going to take, if we're saying to the banking sector it's going to take you a lot longer to recoup your money, then they're going to be less willing, aren't they, to fork it out in the first place?
No, because I think it doesn't make any difference to them, because the money comes back to them in either 20 years or 40 years. So it's all about the security on the property. Are they going to get the money back? Can people make those monthly payments on an ongoing basis? And that is where their business wins, as it were.
And it also doesn't solve the problem of a deposit, does it? Because if you're in generation rent, half of the problem is you're spending so much on rent every month that you can't actually make those savings per month to put that down as a deposit. Sometimes you need 50, 60, 70,000 pounds. So how would that work in this new scheme?
Well, in this new scheme, they need to look at the loan to value ratios, and so they need to allow maybe key workers, first time buyers. It sounds weird, but maybe up to 100% mortgages again. That didn't work the first time, but that was because it was too widely spread. But if we target the right people in the right areas, then we can make sure that it works.
You see, it all sounds well and good talking about key workers and things, but that's no help to someone who's on a low income but not a key worker. I mean, it's not their fault if they're not a key worker.
No, it's not. And that's the issue, is that there's no silver bullet to this problem, which is what the government are trying to almost... That's what they're saying now. So that problem is to do with demand and supply. And what the government need to be doing is they need to overhaul planning. They need to make land available to SME builders. We've got 5 or 6 building companies now that dominate the market, dominate the land. That's the key. So if we can allow SME developers to develop houses, think about how we build houses, where we build houses, and build the amount of houses that we need in the places that we need them. If we do that, then we will reduce house costs. But that is not a short-term solution.
Can I just ask briefly on that, because we're not being yelled at, we're out of time. I mean, there is a problem with the big six building all the houses. Get that, but the problem is, because they are the big six, doesn't that mean their costs are going to be lower than an SME housing company?
Not necessarily. I think that that's not necessarily the case. I think that SME builders will build more desirable houses in the areas we want them, and they can hit the cost points and the price points that we need.
OK. Connolly Barker, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Really good to talk to you, Connolly. Thank you.
Interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Housing's a difficult one, isn't it?
Housing is a difficult one. 95% mortgages, which is what it was in my day when I first started out on the thing. That was just the norm. But then we did see this subprime issue, which That's why it all changed, because of what happened in 2008, everything going pear-shaped,
And
frankly.
I've got loads of friends who are stuck in this renting cycle. They cannot get a deposit together. It's very, very difficult.
That's the thing. Once
if you're
you
trying
get
to get
into
the ladder,
that.
very, very difficult. Yeah, gbnews@gbnews.uk. Well, there's lots more to come, including we'll be finding out more about secure schools. That's after this.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere. Some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud. We keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday, the risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday, and all the while our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
I've been given permission to say hello to you. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. She turns up, she takes control. I mean, honestly.
No.
There she is, rhubarb and custard here.
No, it tells me I look like a sweet. Look, because I've got my pink and my yellow. I do look a little bit like a boiled sweet, actually, now I've seen it.
But
no, it's good to divvy up, I think. Otherwise,
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very good. We've got a tweet from Andrew on Twitter, obviously. He says, "Good morning, Ellie and Stephen. Watching you again today." It's early. "My late grandmother's middle name was Winifred. Enjoying the show so far."
Yeah.
I don't know how we got onto that. Win Rooney, that was it. Win Rooney.
A Win
It's a very
Rooney, yeah.
punny title we saw this morning. We're very impressed. So we were asking if anyone's called Winifred. Andrew's grandmother is. So thank you, Andrew, for getting in touch. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, Tom O'Brien's been in touch over Steve Headley, formerly of the RMT, who was saying we just need to renationalise by just taking back these companies without actually paying for them. And he said France is compensating EDF shareholders something like £8.5 billion for 16%. I mean, you can't just take it back. But we did say, well, that's what we should do. We should just take the money off the rich and give it
to the
back.
poor. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure lots of you have opinions on Steve Headley. He's the RMT Assistant General Secretary that was on a little bit earlier. GBviews at gbnews.uk, and we will share as many of those as we can.
Yeah, and if you agree with what he said, great.
Yes.
Get in touch as well.
All opinions welcome.
Absolutely. Free speech.
OK, the Secretary of State for Justice says he is confident a new secure school for young offenders is the right solution for the UK's failing youth custody provision.
Now, Dominic Raab went to the construction site at a former secure training centre. It's in Rochester in Kent. It's being converted into the first secure school in the UK.
Yeah, it's called Oasis Restore, which will be run by the Oasis Charitable Trust, which already has 52 academies across 5 regions of the UK.
Well, let's speak to the founder, Steve Chalk, who joins us now. Good to see you, as always, Steve. Look, talk us through what a secure school actually is, how it would operate.
Good morning to you both. Yeah, a secure school's a revolution in youth justice, and it's a revolution because as the name suggests, Oasis Restore, it's all about restoration. It's not about retribution. It's not about punishment. It's about a therapeutic approach to asking not what have you done wrong, but what's happened to you. As we know, most people in the youth justice system have been abused. We talk a lot nowadays, don't we, about adverse childhood experiences. That refers to the abuse, the neglect, the violence that so many young people have seen. And as we know, people who go on to abuse in all sorts of ways have normally been those who've been abused. So what you've got to do is you've got to get at the heart of the problems that go on. And the whole setup will be integrated and designed to do just that. So that as people are released through the gates, as they leave us, they don't go on to reoffend. Because as you probably know, both of you, at the moment we have this terrible reoffending rate in this country. So most young people who leave a custodial sentence are back there within a few years.
Morning, Steve. How does this work practically, kind of day to day? So would there be a focus on education, rehabilitation? Would it be more of a holistic approach? How would it work for these young offenders?
Ellie, exactly right. It's a holistic approach. So although it's called a secure school, first of all, of course, it has to be a secure home. It's a secure children's home. And it's cost quite a lot of money to do. But we started, as you just said, Stephen, with an old prison. Well, people can't relax in an old prison. I don't know, I'm sure you realise this. At the end of the day, probably half the way through the day, after your long early start, it's great to get home and sit on your own settee and relax. And relaxing is really important. So if a young person's highly traumatised through life, you've got to create a situation where instead of being on edge the whole time, they can relax in a home first and foremost. So whereas the prison came with wings and cells, what we've had to do is convert everything into houses and little student flats. And instead of cells, we've got bedrooms. So that's the kind of environment, Ali. And then you say, on top of that, it's a school. So it's just like any other school. We run 52 schools. So the school day starts and the school day continues. But, you know, a lot of the kids that we'll have been quite allergic to sitting behind desks. And so, you know, that great saying, if the child doesn't learn the way you teach, start teaching the way they learn. The idea is to work with young people and inspire them about education. Now, we've got lots of experience of how to do that from elsewhere, but that's the task. That's what we're about.
There are going to be people watching and listening, Steve, who will say this puts the focus on the offender rather than the victim.
Yes, of course, I understand that. But of course, what we have to do is put the focus on the offender and the victim. So I say to you again, Stephen, as you know, at the moment, we have one of the very worst reoffending rates in the world. 69% of all young people who go into youth custody reoffend within the first year. 69%, almost 70% reoffend within the first year. But then there's a problem with that statistic also. It's not really a reoffending rate, it's a reconviction rate, isn't it? We don't know how many are reoffending. So if we're going to make our streets safe, society safe, then what we've got to do is something that's effective. So yes, these young people have committed serious crimes, and I'm not trying to downplay or hide those crimes, and we won't be doing that from the young people who are with us. I'm not trying to hide the pain of that from the victims or their families. But what we are saying is that unless we're going to take everybody who's ever offended and lock them up forever, how do you make society safe? And what we've been doing hasn't worked.
Steve Chalk, yeah, you make a pretty solid argument, it has to be said. Really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. It is all about, I mean, you know, whatever you think about the prison system as a whole, it is meant to be punishment and rehabilitation. So if you can't rehabilitate them, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think...
Steve was saying.
Yeah, reconviction rates are, I think that's a really solid point to make. You would rather take in young people and give them that holistic approach.
Especially because we are talking about young people here at the beginning of their lives. It's about, they've made a mistake, sometimes a very serious mistake, and it's about trying to get them back on track so they can be a solid and reliable member of our society. It's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? Surely. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
OK, lots more to come, including all of the news and headlines in the morning papers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. You're right now?
Falling out there,
yeah, what's going on with
Got
you?
them back in now. Let's have a look at the papers for you this morning. PM hopeful Liz Truss is planning a Thatcherite shake-up at the Treasury to give Number 10 more control over the economy, according to The Telegraph.
She's also planning a housing revolution, according to the Daily Express. She plans to overhaul mortgage rules by allowing rental payments to be included in assessments for mortgages.
Rishi Sunak has suffered a new blow in the leadership race as former contender Tom Tugendhat backed Liz Truss. Mr Tugendhat hailed the Foreign Secretary's true Conservative principles.
17 million people across the southeast face a hosepipe ban after the driest July for 111 years. Customers of Southern Water who use hosepipes to wash cars, fill swimming pools or water their gardens will face fines of up to £1,000.
Thousands of British companies are severing economic ties with China, according to the FT. They anticipate a further deterioration of relations between Beijing and the West. And this will, of course, add more pressure to the cost of living crisis.
OK, time to go through the papers now. Here with us this morning is the author James Woodhousen and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Good morning to the two of you. It's lovely to have you both with us. Thank you so much. James, let's start with you. Sunak suffering a new blow. That's in the Times.
Yes, well, I think the campaign against Sunak is, like all the Tory campaigning these past few weeks, extremely fierce. And if they're like that to each other, one does tend to wonder what they'd be like that to us. You know, the way in which the Times has covered it, Sunak faces new blow, suffers new blow. I think it's too early to rule him out because there's still 5 weeks to go.
Yeah, when you look at the polling, though, I mean, she's 20, 25 points ahead.
Yes, but we're in an era of turbulence, Stephen. So, you know, anything could happen in the next 5 weeks. She'll probably win. There's no doubt of that. The forces ranged behind her are considerable. I can't really take, you know, the contribution by Tom Tugendhat, was he in the army, too seriously. You know, he was discredited, I think, in the earlier rounds. And I'm not...
Discredited how? I mean, he didn't get through, but was he discredited?
Well, I think his continual reference to his army career and everything, and his sort of rather owlish glasses that seemed donned for the occasion, made me suspect him more than usual. He's trying to make himself a name from the backbenches a bit in Parliament and so on, but, you know, I really miss a sense of policy from him, and that's what I find about the newspaper coverage generally, that it's all about tax, 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 tax. For 50 years or more, we've debated tax and spend, and I think the country's a little bored by that, and there are other much bigger issues coming down the pike which tax won't fix.
No, but I suppose the problem at the moment is it's not so much about tax, I guess, as about money in general and people wanting more money in their pocket because they haven't got any at the moment.
Well, that's true, but, you know, when we're confronting something like energy or inflation and so on, or housing, which we'll all come on to, the money side of it is only the symptomatic surface of it all. What we've got to look at more clearly is, do they have anything to offer beyond the words from Liz Truss, unleash, unlock, and these kinds of things, where even her proposal on housing is all about just sort of switching the rent to a mortgage. What I'd like to see is something more substantive about the future of technology, the future of investment, how engineering has completely been lost from the public debate, and you never see anything about it very much, except, you know, in the business press. That's something that we need to come to grips with if we're to really revive the country.
I mean, they're important issues, Dawn, but are they going to ignite the excitement of the electorate?
No, I think the only thing that's igniting the excitement of the electorate at the moment is affording things, and that is what we're all concentrating on. I mean, everything is just so expensive now, and the energy bills and the fact that it's going to cost, what, £500 a month?
From January or thereabouts.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine's actually quite close to that now, to be honest with you. I'm dreading what's happening to mine. So I think, you know, the Times and the Express are very much, obviously, I think, behind Liz Truss now. And I think the fact that Tom's come out for her and also Ben Wallace declared his backing on Thursday, didn't he? I think Rishi has a lot of catching up to do. I didn't watch it, I must confess, I know you did, James, the interview he did with Andrew Neil last night. I don't think he covered himself in glory in that one as much as he did. And I like the fact that Liz Truss didn't even bother to do an interview because it's a wedding anniversary. And I actually quite respect that. She's been married 22 years, so I actually quite respect that. Actually, some things are quite important in life. So, but I mean, you know, this is the time story is like, you know, again, it is about tax. It's about putting money back in people's pockets. And, you know, Tugendhat has backed Liz because, you know, she stands for true conservative principles of tax. And that does seem to be what it's coming down to at the moment. It's about giving people the money in their pocket.
But this, if I may, you know, that's what the media say. And obviously, you know, people are concerned about taxes and money and so on, but also people have an eye to the longer term. Rishi Sunak was actually quite good on that, you know, because just to think a penny here or a rent reduction there or subsidy or a windfall tax on energy companies is really going to deal with the root problem, I think is very superficial. And I think the populace is more profound than that.
Well, I tell you what, we've got an advantage there, James.
How?
We have got an advantage because we are not just the media. We don't make up our own minds here. You know, we don't decide here what is important to the population. We ask you, don't we? And so you get in touch. You tell us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. What is your priority? What do you want to see the next Prime Minister do? What would win your vote at a general election? Do you want to take a longer-term view? Do you want to look at the immediate term? Get in touch. And we shall find. So there's one way of finding out, James. We shall get thousands of emails now, and we shall get the answers to that.
I was going to ask you both, sorry, about the timing of this, because we spoke to Ben Wallace yesterday, who was declaring for Liz Truss. Got Tom Tugendhat today. They are quite late declarations. We're hearing, of course, that Liz Truss is 25 points ahead in the latest polling. So how much do you think they're veering for a cabinet position with these these declarations?
I mean, you know, James is right to a certain extent here, because this is what it's all about now, isn't it? It's about their jobs at the end of the day. And, you know, the cynical part of, I think, everybody watching and listening to us today is going to go, yeah, OK, you're saying all this now. Whether it'll happen or not, I'm not sure, smoke and mirrors, but you are actually all angling for a job, aren't you? Your jobs are on the line here. So I think that's what it's about. But, I mean, you know, it's the timing that the ballot papers, I believe, go out to the Tory faithful this weekend. So they will actually, you know, be able to sort of tick their boxes and get them back in during the week. So I think the timing of this is very, very important and very interesting timing. But, you know, the next story we're going to do is the Daily Express one that I've chosen. And it's Liz Truss again, the housing revolution. There's definite push towards Liz, isn't there?
She's pulling things out of her hat now, isn't she? She's pulling things out of her hat. She knows there's a housing crisis.
This is the thing, Ellie. Like, are you just saying this, or do you actually mean it?
But
and that's what people will be asking.
Is it? This isn't actually new.
No, it isn't, and that's the thing. So, you know, the Express have done page one on it, and sort of like a big spread inside, you know, 4.4 million renters in this country. She's declared she's going to tear up all the red tape. Easier said than done, obviously.
Would she deregulate the land so that we can build houses nearly everywhere, as long as they're good? That's what one would identify with the sort of warmed-up Thatcherism that Liz Truss
You don't want houses built everywhere, do we?
Yes, we do. We need not on Snowdonia, but, you know, 90% of...
But Greenbelt, you think?
Yes, 90% of Britain's surface area is unurbanised, Stephen, and it's about time we move to mass manufacturing and deregulating the land. Mass manufacturing would allow better quality houses, better insulated houses, and the robots are there to do it. We just haven't tried to do that, and it's amazing that the Tories won't deregulate the land, which was nationalised by Labour in the.
I tend to think, and call me old-fashioned, and I've got a house, so I'm not in a position where I'm looking for one, which obviously does just skew my view. England's green and pleasant land. Plus, I'm from the Lake District. I have real concerns about building on greenbelt land. Brownfield sites, loads of brownfield sites.
There are, and particular, and I think the reason they're not going down the route James is suggesting is because a lot of Tory voters will live in the shires, green and leafy villages, so they are going to be very concerned about having a brand new estate literally built in the field next to them. So I think, again, they are playing very much to the gallery and saying what the Tory heartland want to hear at the moment.
But we all have
actually
children,
happens.
don't we? I mean, I hear what you say, Stephen, and, you know, I'm no brownfield brutalist either. That was what I'd call Gordon Brown, who pioneered the idea of always building on brownfield land. You know, what we need is houses for the kids. What we need is 500,000, maybe 1 million houses a year. Macmillan nearly did 500,000. We never hear about those targets. Targets alone won't do it. But that and the deregulation of the land, and with local control over house building and house quality, is what we need to meet the crisis of home ownership in this country. Not saying, well, look, if we calculate your rent and we move a little bit around to your mortgage, you know, then we'll be able to do it. It's all cosmetic. It's all Band-Aid. There's a much bigger social crisis brewing, not just with the homeless, but with people who, if you look at China right now, people are not paying their mortgages, right? In the face of Chinese Communist Party repression, they are demonstrating and being locked up by the police because they are refusing to pay their housing bills. We're not far off that in the next few years.
Well, we've been encouraged to go on energy bill strike, aren't we already?
Well, there we are.
Autumn and winter, don't pay your energy bills. I mean, whether people will actually do that or not is another matter, but that is one suggestion as well. I mean, strike is obviously the flavour of the month at the moment.
The problem, there's a big problem with that, actually, which is one of our guests raised earlier on, which is if you pay for your energy, direct debit or whatever it may be, they're not going to cut everybody off straight away.
No.
They're not. But if you're on the low, it's always people at the lower end. If you're on the lower end, and if you're on a key meter or a card meter, then if you don't pay, then you cut yourself off. So those are the people who actually would end up without any energy.
Very good point, yeah.
Well, did we hear from Liz or Rishi about nuclear? Did we hear from them about carbon capture and storage? Did we hear from them about direct current, which is a great way to transmit electricity, not just alternating current? Did we hear from them about how we need better and different goals from net zero, which we are not going to reach, and there'll be further social unrest when they try to stop the sale of petrol-driven cars in 2030 and hybrid cars in 2035. You know, you can declare all you like in an election campaign, but you've got to address the fact, since you're talking about the people, that a whole lot of people are motorists, and they're already very nervous about petrol prices. And, you know, it's not just a price question.
And then the thing is with that one as well, James, it's the small businesses. I mean, it's the people driving, you know, to use the cliche, the white vans.
Man, yes. Otherwise known as the working class.
The working classes, they're the ones, it's not, you know, very few people drive for leisure these days. It's about, you know, working, getting from A to B with your tools, with your whatever, your gardening equipment, whatever it is. But they're the ones that are really suffering this. I mean, they can't afford to put fuel in their cars or their vans. They can't afford to go to work.
Meanwhile, just very briefly, James, we're almost out of time, in the Daily Mail, what we won't be able to afford to do is put the hosepipe on.
Well,
very shortly.
The thing I'm a bit perplexed about is that there are £1,000 fines if you know, water my tomatoes, for example. And who's imposing those?
Who's going to report you?
Well...
you know, is it the government?
Neighbours might, yeah.
Is it the government? Is it Southern Water? And the second thing to say is I just got a tweet yesterday that from somewhere around England's green and pleasant land saying they've just built a reservoir, the first reservoir in this country, apparently, it might be wrong, but I think it's right, for 40 years. So we got tons of rain in this country, you know, not recently, but there are things called reservoirs, especially in the Lake District. And are we really saying that we're so subject to nature, you know, climate change and now low rainfall, that humankind, can't do anything about it? No, it's a question of infrastructure.
But this is actually Southern Water. Obviously, it's London and the South East that are suffering more. As you look at the map of the country at the moment, up north, it's actually much wetter, and they're going, why are you doing that? This is Southern Water. It's going to affect 17 million people. But basically, Southern Water is owned by an Australian bank, and their chief executive earned £14.8 million last year. Don't know how she copes, do you? And basically, and how much water are they actually leaking? 21 million gallons of water a day through leaks.
Yeah, so that needs to be resolved.
Exactly right.
We are out of time. James, Dawn, we shall see you in the next hour. Thank you very much indeed.
So much. OK, let's bring you up to date with everything that's going on today. Former Tory leadership contender Tom Tugendhat has endorsed Liz Truss in the race to be Prime Minister, in a huge blow to Rishi Sunak. Writing in The Times, Mr Tugendhat said that the Foreign Secretary's promises of tax cuts are based on true Conservative principles and that she can unite the party.
French and UK border forces are promising to improve delays across the Channel ahead of a busy weekend. There could be a 2-hour delay at the port of Dover. Tens of thousands of cars were gridlocked last weekend, of course, with much longer delays. Authorities have blamed a shortage of French border officers and a crash on the M20.
Rail services are expected to be disrupted today as members of the drivers' union ASLEF engage in a 24-hour strike. The industrial action is affecting train operators such as Great Western Railway, Greater Anglia and LNER, among others.
The Ukrainian president has said the deaths of dozens of prisoners in a Russian-held jail showed there should be clear legal recognition that Russia was a state sponsor of terrorism. The US has so far resisted the push to label Russia as a terrorist state. Well, there is no path out of economic oblivion for Putin, or at least that's what a new report is claiming.
Yes, businesses are in retreat and sanctions are catastrophically crippling the Russian economy, it says.
Well, the Yale-authored report details the consequences of invading Ukraine, with allies China and India taking advantage of its woes to secure discounted prices for gas.
Well, we're now joined by business commentator and co-founder of Regionally, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely tie. Thank you very much for joining us here this morning. Always dressed impeccably, Justin.
My pyjamas.
I do find this absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Because this report would suggest that Russia relies a lot more on Europe than Europe would rely on Russia.
You had to put Russia into the right context, because we look, there's Russia, a superpower. It's not. Its entire economy, think how large that economy is less than half the value of the United Kingdom. So we think it's actually a vast economy. It's not. Actually, it's a very poor economy and has been getting poorer over the past few years. But Putin said we'll make the economy more dynamic, not dynamite, by expanding out from all the sort of the basic commodities. And he's done exactly the opposite. He's focused on it. So its economy is in real trouble. The population has been shrinking. The numbers have been falling off a cliff, some probably pushed. And so its economy is not only just in a bad state beforehand, he's been amassing cash elsewhere, but of course there's a hit by sanctions. And so the economy, now with the sanctions, is in serious, dire trouble.
You see, this is interesting because there was so much talk about the sanctions 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, and then the word on that has all gone very quiet. And I was actually, oddly enough, only thinking last week, well, is it making any difference or not? Is it going to bite or not? Is it going to change what he's doing or not?
He can carry on for the time being. No, there is enough money stuffed away, not under mattresses, but through the oligarch system, not affected by the West. Because the oligarchs are all over the place. They're not just where we normally expect them to find them in Kensington. So he can carry on. But after that, he is running out of available cash and the ability to be able to import at the right sort of scale. Yes, China and India, legally or not, will actually provide him with more facilities. The indirect black market will provide more. The costs will go up. But also, we have to look upon the fact that we see Russia as this huge army. It's a huge army, very badly equipped, with a few decent bits of stuff. But remember, they had one aircraft carrier, which virtually had to be towed back from the Lebanon last year because it patently didn't work. So all is not quite as gleaming as they would have you believe. Equally, the other way around, from the point of view of Ukraine, they aren't exactly going to roll over on tickle their tummy. They are, a very, very aggressive, and they just go back to the old-fashioned techniques, which they know how to operate with. They've done it in Grozny, they've done it in Syria, and that is blast their way through.
Yeah.
And Russia is one of the leading exporters of gas. And Putin, as we know, has been manipulating the flow of that. But he can't keep that up for long. Surely it will be impacting the country. I mean, how long are we talking here?
Well, the trouble is other people will buy the gas off him and then sell it around the market. So Europe won't have any gas from Russia. No, but it'll be coming around through another route and coming back into them. Yeah. So, but it interrupts his cash flow, and that'll make life very difficult indeed. So what you're going to find now, actually, as it starts impacting on domestic Russia, less things are available, the economy starts slowing down, issue with unemployment, but these all take a while to go in, and there's only so much can do. The issue will be when someone turns around to some of the oligarchs and says, here are some Russian bonds, currently at a discount of 80% of the value they should be. If you actually topple that bloke, the value of these is going to go back up by a huge amount of money. And you'll suddenly find, actually, that the regime will change because it'll be economically worth their while. It's a sad, cynical way of dealing with it, but that's the situation you're in.
Yeah, just briefly, Justin, does this give the international community some hope that actually this may force the Ukraine situation to end? If it's in that bad of a state.
We need a bit of hope we can, because this isn't just about Ukraine or Europe. This, by actually cutting off grain supplies to the poorest areas of the world, will mean there will be then political and social problems. There will be revolution and all the difficulties within people in the world we don't want in there. And, of course, we're in a position in the global economy where we can't afford it. And so that's what Putin's playing for, on the basis that it will get... people will give in because they can't afford to have more destabilised nations around the world.
OK. Justin, really good to see you, as always. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, when it comes to the economy of Russia, just how it is all playing out in all of this. It's a fascinating insight. Will that give hope to the Ukrainians and to the international community? Because if we get that all back on track, well, the boost for our economy and the cost of living crisis could...
And the price of petrol, we hope.
Everything.
It means everything comes back down.
Should get better.
Yep.
Should. Anyway, stay with us. We've got lots more to come for you in the next hour here on Breakfast, including the very latest on the rail strikes going on today.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere, some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud, we keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday. The risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday. And all the while, our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Check before you travel. That's the advice as rail services are severely disrupted again in the latest bout of industrial action.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Saturday the 30th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, on your radio, online as well. So if you go out and about today, you can take us with you.
Lucky you. Here are your top stories today. Train drivers at 7 operators across the country walk out for 24 hours over pay. The strike is expected to impact those travelling to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and football fans attending their first games of the season.
A housing revolution. Liz Truss pledges to help millions of renters buy their first home. The Tory leadership contender wants rental payments included in assessments for mortgages.
Put your hosepipe away. Around 17 million Brits face fines of up to £1,000 if they use their hosepipe to water the garden, wash the car or fill up a swimming pool, as restrictions were brought in by Southern Water. The company says high demand and parched rivers has led to this decision.
And it's Win Rooney, Colleen's court victory over Rebecca Vardy. We've finally reached the climax of the Wagatha saga, so we'll look at what both characters do next.
And as ever, you can join in on any of our discussions by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us.
At GB News.
That's what
finishing that sentence.
At GB News, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. I try my best. The big question of the day is rhubarb and custard or fruit salad?
Yes. So, Stephen called me a rhubarb and custard sweet this morning, but then Dawn Newson, our lovely newspaper reviewer, came in and said, no, you look more like a fruit salad sweetie. So we're now having this debate in the office and we'd like you to join in. Is this dress more rhubarb and custard boiled sweet or a fruit salad sweet?
Yeah.
I'm about to do a Twitter poll.
Yes,
so
do a
if you'd
Twitter
like to be
poll.
involved in a bit of Saturday fun, please do vote.
It is Saturday fun. Please don't get in touch to say there's more important things to be talking about, because we know.
And we're doing that as well.
We know there is.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need... Everything's so grim at the minute. Sometimes you just need a little bit of a smile. And do you know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And we'd like to provide it all in one place, wouldn't we? Tell you everything you need to know, but also some laughter and fun along the way.
And a load of stuff you don't.
Yeah, and there's stuff you don't as well.
Now, our top story today is all about the rail strike. Passengers being warned to brace for severe travel disruptions all weekend long, actually, as railway workers, drivers mainly this time, across Britain go on the most widespread strike since 1996.
Yes, members of the ASLEF union will stop work for 24 hours at 8 train operators, with some 5,500 staff walking out after talks broke down over pay.
Now, the strike comes as Birmingham hosts the first weekend of Commonwealth Games. It also coincides with the opening day of the new English Football League season.
Well, for more, let's speak to travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder. Good morning, Simon. And before we even get onto the trains, because I know you're there at King's Cross for us, this time yesterday we were talking to you and you were on the Amalfi Coast. So you got there very, very quickly. And how was your journey home on the plane? I hope you didn't have too much disruption at the airport.
very kind of you. No, actually, Naples Airport worked pretty well. The hold-up was British Airways being just over an hour late, but it was fine. I mean, an hour's delay in these difficult days, I'll take that. Things working actually pretty smoothly. Thank you for asking. And just on that dress, strawberry mivvy, I think, for older viewers will do the trick. But there we are. Yes, King's Cross Station is such an interesting place to be here because we have over to the right LNER, the main operator on the flagship rail line, which is, of course, from here to Yorkshire, North East England and into Scotland. They have cut back services. So, for instance, there's only one return trip between Leeds and London today. There is a train every 2 hours between here and Edinburgh, stopping at a few places in northern England. And then there's a train every hour or so to York, but a really reduced service. And yet at the same time, you've got, for example, Grand Central and Lumo, which run trains from here as well, doing a pretty normal service. But warning, it's going to be incredibly crowded. And over to my left at St Pancras Station, well, that's the home of Eurostar, East Midlands Railway and Thameslink, all of whom are running normally. And that's because this is a fight between ASLEF, the trade union, and a number of train operators, but by no means all. And depending on your journey, you may well be able to travel today.
With the word reports, though, Simon, that this is actually sort of grinding about 50% of the network to a standstill. Is that accurate?
Well, that all depends on where you're trying to get to, helpfully. We are actually going to see a kind of, in 2 weeks' time, a much bigger strike, because that will bring in Avanti West Coast, which runs from London to the West Midlands, North West England and into Scotland, and also Cross Country, which does lots of stuff, particularly centred on Birmingham. If, for example, you wanted to travel on the Great Western region, and that's a really significant one, as you can imagine this time of year, there are no trains serving Devon and Cornwall on Great Western. Nothing serving from London, Paddington, South Wales. The only link they've got once an hour, shuttling between London, Swindon and Bristol. But on South Eastern, also affected by this strike, there are no trains at all. So if you were heading for France, sorry, there's a very, very noisy motorbike over there. If you were heading for Dover, Folkestone, any of the beautiful Kent resorts, well, you're not going to get there on the train today.
Simon, we were speaking to the Steve Headley, it was, of the RMT earlier. He was saying that he's hoping these strikes lead to a generalised strike wave. He wants everybody to demand an 11% pay rise, obviously in line with inflation. So, I mean, for lots of people, especially in the cost of living crisis, relying on public transport to get to work, to get to places, they're fearing, how long is this going to go on for?
Oh, sure. And the rail unions feel that they most definitely have the upper hand. They feel that they've got a lot of public sympathy. They're saying, yeah, the fact that we want to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% shouldn't stop other people from getting it. We should all be after it. But actually, there's something much more nuanced going on behind the scenes here. Train drivers and other rail employees are employed very often on incredibly arcane, out-of-date conditions where, for instance, in a lot of train operators, working on Sunday isn't a normal day of work, and people will only come in and do it on overtime. Now, everyone agrees that that's got to change, but the unions, in particular ASLEF, the train drivers union, doing all it can to extract every single percentage it can for changing those terms and conditions. So it isn't just a matter of finding a number which might be 6% and saying, OK, we'll take that as a pay rise. They are saying, OK, we are going to, we might make Sunday a day of work, but we're going to need an extra 10% or something to reflect the cut in earnings, because so many drivers make a fair amount of overtime on Sundays. So that's going on at the same time as the government saying, hang on, rail revenue has collapsed because people aren't commuting nearly as much as they might. And by the way, we spent £16 billion keeping every single rail worker in a job during the COVID pandemic, which is very, very different, for example, to the airline industry.
Yeah, indeed. Simon, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed, as always.
Thank you.
Hardest working man in the biz.
He gets out and about, doesn't he?
Yeah. He was in the Amalfi Coast this time yesterday, and there he is outside King's Cross. Doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop.
He was talking to us during the clattering of his breakfast, wasn't he, yesterday, in the hotel in the Amalfi Coast.
There isn't anything that man doesn't know
it's
about
true.
transport. It's quite scary, actually.
Yeah.
It's 9 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines. And former Tory leadership contender Tom Tugendhat has endorsed Liz Truss in the race to be PM. That is a big blow to Rishi Sunak, it's got to be said. He's written in the Times this morning, Mr Tugendhat that is, and said the Foreign Secretary's promises of tax cuts are based on true Conservative principles and she can unite the party. He said both contenders have huge qualities and talents, but Ms Truss has the advantage on the world stage because of her cabinet position.
Rail services are expected to be disrupted today as members of the drivers' union ASLEF engage in a 24-hour strike. The industrial action is affecting train operators such as Great Western Railway, Greater Anglia and LNER, among others.
At least 23 people have been killed after flash flooding in eastern Kentucky after a series of storms. Torrential rain devastated the area, the governor there declaring a state of emergency in 6 counties. Homeowners have been trapped and forced to swim to safety, others rescued by boat after the flooding hit the US state.
The governor of New York has issued an executive order in response to the growing monkeypox outbreak in the state and declared for it to be a disaster emergency. According to data by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, New York has the highest reported cases of monkeypox in the United States and is now the epicenter of the outbreak.
I don't know what to think about monkeypox.
I know.
It's like-
it looks really sore. Have you seen the pictures?
Yeah, it doesn't look nice. There has been a fatality recorded in Spain,
yeah.
which is the first one in Spain. I don't know about the first one in Europe, the first one in Spain. But generally, you do just recover, apparently, from it. But I can't quite get my head around this being a global disaster, global emergency, which the WHO declared last week. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it all.
We don't really know enough, do we, yet? But I have heard that the smallpox vaccine is working on monkeypox, yes.
Yeah.
So that's good news, at least.
And it seems to be predominantly in London, here in the UK. But anyway, I mean, I suppose you've just got to keep an eye out, haven't you?
Yeah. I suppose it's with anything new, isn't it, that you'd be cautious.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's not as bad as it seems.
No, let's hope not. Now, if you're thinking of using your hosepipe this weekend to wash your car or even to have a water fight with the kids to cool down, think again. About 70 million people across England, in the southeast particularly, are facing the prospect of a hosepipe ban.
Yes, Southern Water bosses have announced the UK's first ban for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight as the nation faces its driest July since 1911. The water firm claims to have lost 98.5 million litres of water a day to leaks last year.
Let's talk to Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist at the British Weather Services, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Jim.
Thank you.
We've had some nice weather and we've had a couple of days of very, very hot weather. Does that justify a hosepipe ban?
No, it's not just about a couple of days or even an extreme day or two of heat waves. It's a long thread, this one, going back, Stephen. It goes back to the spring, in actual fact. And the counties that we're talking about, roughly, you're right, southeast England down to Southampton, a little bit up from there. They've been in well, not a drought condition, but that long thread, if you like, goes all the way back to the spring. And really, the summer so far has not helped. It's been virtually bone dry. Anybody in these areas looking at their grass on the parks or in their garden will realise this. Strangely enough, though, there is a big division. You go further north and west, and you end up in a situation where, in actual fact, it's quite the reverse. There's lots of green up there. There's been plenty of rain, and particularly in the northwest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, they're wondering what we're talking about. So it really is a nation divided.
I mean, it's got to be said. There's been a lot of talk about the weather recently. Meteorologists have been coming in for a lot of stick, haven't you?
I thought you might go on that one. Look, we've got we've got waterproof skins up, guys. The drip, drip, drip. I think you're meaning the alluding to the climate deniers and our fraternity, if you like, talking about the heat wave and how that was aligned to climate change, quite rightly. And then we got the flat earthers come out and basically saying, you know, that it's a load of rubbish and, you know, let's go out there and enjoy it, etc., etc. Well, you can. Some people can. I think we're learning. We're learning that these sort of extreme temperatures will affect people. I think that, although I'm not in that particular vocation, I think the health people are saying there's around about 1,000 excess deaths in the UK because of the heat. So it's very real. We don't get to 40 degrees ever. So this is new territory for us all, and I don't demean it in any shape or form. It is exactly what it says on the can.
Good morning to you, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us. I think what's going to shock people the most, Steve and I just read there, Southern Water claiming they're losing 98.5 million litres of water a day to leaks. So how much is this about the weather that we've been seeing, and how much is this actually to do with leaky pipes? It's both. It's simple as that. One's a long-term thing, which is the leaky pipes. They haven't been fixed as much as they should have been. I mean, I don't want to go too far into the business of water companies because it's not my vocation. However, I think it's a long-standing thing that water loss through broken pipes, etc., is something that has been around for not just a year or two, but decades. And although obviously it's a catch-up situation, once they fix one, the next two go. But the weather hasn't played ball as far as temperature and lack of rainfall is concerned. So look, when you get these sort of, even on a day like today, 25, 26 degrees, let's just say in London, there's going to be a demand on water. And I think the 40 degree stuff we endured a week or two ago, that just exacerbated everything. So look, it's a dual thing. You know, and I've got to say, looking forward, if this is your next question, looking forward, I don't actually see any alleviance from that. I don't see any remedy in the next fortnight for those southern counties. Very different in the north and the west. In fact, we're looking at floods potentially in northwest Scotland if we're not careful. You know, that's very wet up there. But down in the south, down in the southeast, and looking at the models I was looking at a few minutes ago, there is nothing to show really between now and even mid-August. So we've still got some time to go on this one, Ellie. No, that's not great news, Jim. Lots of people at home will be very distracted by your lovely background. You're in Phuket in Thailand. Yes, tell us about that. What's the weather like there? It's I'm sitting outside. You can probably tell that. I'm on a balcony. I feel very privileged. I'm actually on a working holiday, actually. I'm actually writing a second book, which is all about surviving and being safe in climate change. All the various dangers and hazards that occur with climate change, not just climate change, but hazardous weather. So I'm busy. Don't just think I'm on a holiday. And I do love coming on your programme talking about the weather. Yeah, you're dead right. The weather's been in centre stage. But look, we get no shortage of rain here. We had thunderstorms last night and yesterday. But it comes... Probably you can just see a little bit behind me, a little bit of sunshine poking through the foliage and all the rest of it. So, yeah, as I say, I'm privileged, but I'm working. Jim, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We're not jealous at all. Thank you very much indeed. I've never done Thailand. Neither have I. I'd really like to. Do you? Should we go on a working holiday? Oh, yeah, go on then. We'll suggest that to the bosses after this show. Sort of doesn't appeal to me in a way when I think about Thailand. When you see pictures like that and they're all looking lush and green and sort of rainforesty sort of thing. Oh, I know. It looks good, doesn't it? Looks nice. Very, very nice. Plenty of you getting in touch. Thank you very much indeed. Some good news from John. Morning, John. You haven't said where you live, which I'd like to know. We'd like to know that, yeah. It says price at the pumps. Currently, near me, the price at the pumps is coming down. It was nearly £2 a litre, now £1.67. That's a huge drop. Now, I've seen anything like that. That's amazing. The lowest I've heard of up until now, John, was £1.81, which I still haven't seen. I filled up the other day, it was £1.93.
So, but 167, if it's going to start coming down like that, brilliant, that's going to help.
We love to see it. I filled up on the A1 the other day. It was 205.
Was it?
Litre, yeah. And I was running out of fuel, so I had to do it, and it was a very bad time. It was a bad time for me, yeah. Jean makes a fantastic point, and I do really want to put this to Simon Calder. We might need to give him a ring. She says, are we going to get a refund on our yearly rail cards for all the days of the strikes? We lost months on them during the pandemic and were told we would not get a refund. I will not be buying another card. And I hadn't thought about that. And we are, there's already been 2 or 3 strike days in the last month alone. And there's more to come, as we just heard from Simon Calder. So that is something that surely will be looked at.
We asked for your views on priorities for the Tory leadership. Henry's been in touch. I agree with your newspaper reviewer, James. There are far more important issues to be debated, not just tax. The energy situation in Europe should take more prominent position in the debates, and how the mad dash for net zero has brought doom and gloom for citizens and the economies of Europe. What are the leadership candidates going to do about it?
Yep. And on the topic of the leadership race, Eileen's been in touch, talking about the TV debates. She said Rishi Sunak was constantly interrupting Liz Truss in a very aggressive manner. Unless I've missed parts of it, I didn't notice Liz Truss interrupting Rishi Sunak at all. Yet people are saying they're both aggressive. I cannot see it at all. Am I wrong? What do other people think? I love your show, by the way. Thanks, Eileen. Thanks for being in touch. We do love hearing from you, don't we? We love people getting in touch.
We do. Let us know if you think they are equally aggressive or not. It's interesting. I certainly think in the last sort of debate, and I think Rishi Sunak is trying to soften things. I think someone's had a word with him to say, don't be so sort of aggressive. It's interesting, though, he's being criticised for being aggressive when perhaps you do want someone to take a real strong stand. He's been criticised for being too slick, too polished, which perhaps previously we would have looked at as a good thing. It's difficult. It's all about reading the room. It's all about the environment at the time, isn't it, and what people actually want. I was also quite disturbed to hear that Liz Truss is 47.
Is she?
I knew Rishi Sunak was 42. So I'm now in a position
They're
where
both very young.
Whoever wins, whoever becomes Prime Minister is younger than me. Which I think is the first time that's ever happened. That is weird, though, because you do think... I don't know what you think. All of you who are older than 47 out there. The idea that these people are running the country. I don't think I could run the country.
No.
Why do they think they can? I don't know. Isn't it funny?
No, it's amazing.
And doctors and policemen are getting younger too. What's that all about? Maybe that's just me. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Much more to come for you, including a look at the Commonwealth Games.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rains. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere, some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud, we keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday, the risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday, and all the while our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
7:26. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie on your TV and on your radio and online. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning to you. Now, as Birmingham hosts the first weekend of the 2022 Commonwealth Games, our Midlands reporter Will Hollis has been covering the event so far, and he's got the latest for us. Good morning to you, Will. How's it going there this morning?
Good morning. Yes, it's almost the morning after the day before. What a fantastic start it was for England as well as Scotland yesterday. Both countries earning medals, and Australia slightly ahead of us, but we won't talk about that at this part early on in the competition. What we are going to be talking about, of course, is the big games. What's going to be the main focus for people? It's the marathon this morning. Where we are outside of Birmingham New Street, you can see the marathon routes. This is pretty much the end of it, where it's going up Hill Street right to Victoria Square, where we were, that main nucleus of these Birmingham Games for in the city centre, that main fan zone. And this is where the athletes are going to be coming after they've run that 26 miles. One set of marathons is already underway. I think two sets of marathons are already underway. But it's not just how the athletes are going to be getting out of the city, getting around the city this morning. Of course, it's how people hoping to see the athletes are getting around the city. Birmingham Games wants this to be the most sustainable Commonwealth Games ever, so they're pretty much encouraging public transport wherever you can go. But the difficulty here is for people that are trying to get around the city and into the city for long distance trains. That's going to be a real problem for most people, because as we've been talking about all morning, the union ASLEF is on strike. There's also been other strikes throughout the week, as well as more strikes coming in the week. So West Midlands Trains is running no train services today. Cross Country and Avanti, they're running highly reduced services. So the advice is, if you are planning to get around using the services that are on, expect them to be incredibly busy. And some services, they just simply aren't running, so you're going to have to look at other ways of getting around. Of course, Commonwealth Games, they've been putting on lots of bus services, so if you do have a ticket, that means that you can get a bus service. They're also encouraging people to ride bikes and also walk around the city city, if the arena that you go into or wherever your venue is close enough to do something like that. Now, the rail delivery group, which represents different rail operators, they're accusing ASLEF of targeting these games specifically, as well as the start of the football season, so affecting how people might be able to get to their favourite football team's games. But ASLEF, in response, have said that they didn't want to be on strike, but this is something that they just have to do because of the nature of the dispute that they're in right now. So I think it's going to be incredibly busy in the city, no matter what. It's going to be quite hard to get around the city, no matter what, but even more difficult if you were hoping to get to the games using a train.
OK, Will, thank you very much indeed. Well, away from the Commonwealth Games, there's lots of sport going on. Ada McGee is here, of course, as always. Good morning.
Good morning to you as well. I like the Commonwealth Games, actually. I'm quite enjoying it. I'll tell you what I like about it is that they've revamped an existing facility. So, you know, with the Olympics and lots of the athletics movements, you build these massive stadiums all around the world. There are huge white elephants all over the globe. For example, the Sydney Olympic Stadium back in 2000 was built. It's not really used for any particular reason anymore. It's just standing there. The Barcelona Olympics in 1992, that stadium isn't really used for very much now. A football club plays there, I think, but that's about it. But overall, there have been a lot of wasted opportunities around the world in terms of
stadia. They've built a brand new aquatics, though.
Yeah, they have, but that's not difficult to form a legacy out of. That will always be used by local people. A stadium is different because you've got to fill that, and you're talking about multi-thousands of people. And so they've revamped Alexandra Park, and that keeps the cost down. So £780 million sounds a lot as a bill for the Commonwealth Games, but all that finance was preordained before the pandemic, so no one can really say that it's an issue of priorities, I don't think.
Yeah, no, fair point. What's going on with Ronaldo?
Well, it's quite interesting, actually. He was on Instagram yesterday. Well, he must have been because you don't tweet on Instagram, do you?
I don't know what you do. Gram?
But a message. Yeah, all right, let's gram it out there, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, this fan, this fan starts speculating. I don't know where he's from. I think he's a young kid, but he speculated that Cristiano Ronaldo may have played his last game for Manchester United. So I don't think I'm going to see him in a Man United shirt again. Martin Blackburn has covered the old boss of mine, actually, funnily enough, at The Sun. He has covered the story quite well on the back page here. Cristiano Ronaldo has revealed he will make his Manchester United return in tomorrow's friendly against Rayo Vallecano. Now, this fan tweeted what I just told you, that he might not play again. Ronaldo comes in and says, "The King plays on Sunday."
Oh, wow. He had the last word.
Yeah, he did. So he's
the King.
Yeah, so they've got 2 games this weekend. They're going to Oslo today to play Atletico Madrid, which is one of the clubs Ronaldo has speculated to be moving to, actually, possibly even on a loan deal. But I don't think it's going to happen, mainly because their coach, Diego Simeone, likes players to press high and is highly energetic, whereas he's 37, he hasn't really got the legs to do that anymore. So I'm not sure how he's going to fit into that system. They're not really a tight side either that can accommodate real superstars. They're very much about the team ethic. I'm not sure Ronaldo buys into that as much as he used to in the last few years. So they've got a game tomorrow at Old Trafford. Now, this is be interesting because they're playing at Old Trafford. Ronaldo's going to be playing, it looks like, so he says, assuming he's picked. So
well, it'll be interesting if he gets left on the bench.
Let's see what the relationship. Martin makes this point in his piece. Let's see what the relationship is like with the United fans. Has it been strained as a result of Ronaldo's conduct over the summer? He's been desperate to try and get. Yeah, listen, I grew up in a generation. No one ever wanted to get out of Man United. No one ever wanted to get out there. It was the place to be. The only place after Manchester United was down. Ronaldo doesn't see that anymore because they're not in the Champions League. He wants to play for a team in the Champions League. But does he go out in front of the Old Trafford faithful tomorrow? I know it's only a friendly, but it will be a full house. It always is at Manchester United. How will his relationship be with those supporters? Will they consider it quite unedifying, the whole episode that's played out in the last month, ever since Duncan Castles broke the story in the Sunday Times?
Is he going to get booed tomorrow? I mean, because that's got to be a first for Ronaldo.
Yes, I don't think so. I don't. I think
more awkward, isn't it?
I think a lot of fans will respect everything he's done for the club. His problem last season wasn't performance, wasn't individual performance. He did his bit. He scored 24 goals in all competitions. I don't believe, though, that he thinks that he can fulfil what the limited time he has left in his career is going to be fulfilled at Manchester United. He still thinks he can win more trophies. So I think United fans understand that. United fans are used to winning trophies. They've been serial winners for the last 30 years. So they understand the players' desire. That's how they attracted players from other clubs, because they felt that those individual players playing at Leeds United or Aston Villa couldn't do what they wanted at those clubs, so they moved to Manchester United. So they're knowledgeable people, the supporters. I think they will forgive Ronaldo for this. I don't think they'll boo him. I don't think they'll have it in their hearts to build a player who's been so consistently good and earn legendary status. There may be some mutterings of boos tomorrow, but long term, there's no damage to the relationship, I don't think.
No, there's no I in team, is there?
No, there's not, but there's a me.
Yeah.
Well done, Aidan. Very nice.
Yeah,
Very
we'll
nice.
see you a little bit later on.
Cheers.
Aidan, thank you. We've got lots coming up for you in a couple of minutes, including the papers with Dawn Neeson and James Woodhouse, so we'll see you then.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
7:35, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Yeah, we're going to be having a look at the front pages now with James Woodhouse, forecaster and author, and Dawn Neeson, former editor of the Daily Star. Good morning to both of you. You were fabulous in the first hour, so let's go again, shall we? Dawn, we'll start with you.
Bottom them up, isn't it?
Yes.
Start with you. Daily Telegraph, shall we? Truss and the economy shaker.
Yes, we were just trying to decide what sweet, by the way, sorry to go off on a very serious subject here, that Stephen looked like. I mean, we know you look gorgeous in
grey and blue.
Yeah, we couldn't think of a sweet. I mean,
not anything like overboiled cabbage, I should think.
No, you look like a dishwasher tablet.
Oh, thanks very much.
No, like
I thought it was Fox's Glacier Mints you were comparing him with, Dawn.
No, that's us. We are coordinating.
But they do have
Did you two have a
transparent
chat
ones.
before you came on?
Yeah, we do. I message people whenever I come
I've
on
never
here.
seen them before in my life.
We're going icy blue today, James.
Right.
There you go.
Anyway, back to the
Telegraph. Back to the really serious stuff. This is the front page of the Telegraph today, who are obviously going with the politics. I mean, you pays your money, you take your choice today. Quite a few of the papers have gone on the politics again, but some obviously on the Vardy-Rooney thing. So this is Liz Truss is drawing up Thatcherite plans to give Number 10 more control over the economy. And I don't think, funny enough, Rishi will be featuring in her plans for a new Chancellor somehow.
No.
She's obviously she is the front runner now in the leadership race, and ballot papers go out this weekend if you're lucky to vote. So 160,000 people will be having their say. But she is believed to be considering installing Kwasi Kwarteng, the current business secretary, as Chancellor.
Really?
Really interesting. Absolutely.
That is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon Clarke.
He's another one who's younger than me.
I've got a story for you later on.
It's coming up about this one.
Great
today.
story about Stephen. Simon Clarke is set to stay on, which is OK, curious. But also the
Which one's Simon Clarke?
He's sort of like a number 2 in the Treasury at the moment, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
but a lot of people
Chief
are going.
Secretary, I think.
Yes, I think so. But a lot of people are going, who? Sorry, I don't know actually who you are. But two names you will know, Stephen, are Jacob Rees-Mogg and John Redwood are expected to play a big part.
John Redwood?
He was actually Margaret Thatcher's head of policy, wasn't he? So if you remember back in the day. So she is actually going full-blown Margaret Thatcher.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's a complete. She's obviously, as I said, obviously focusing on the Treasury because I think this is a Rishi issue, isn't it? we were saying actually, during the break that these people are on the same side, and if only Keir Starmer had shown as much energy in attacking the Tories as they're showing attacking one another, he wouldn't have the issue at the moment of no one actually knowing what he's standing for.
But it's a competition, isn't it? They're going to be... I mean, I know we always say, oh, look at this, it's blue on blue, as they call it, which is not a phrase I like, because blue on blue is actually a very serious thing if you're in the armed forces. But it's... there's going to be backbiting and fighting and all the rest of it.
The tendency to play the man or the woman, not the ball, is a real problem for us. We're facing all of these challenges. And, I mean, I'm no fan of Liz Truss any more than I am of Rishi Sunak. I'm amused that she adopts the Labour Guardian line that the Treasury is to blame for all our problems. I think that's very glib and superficial. Where I think she's nearer the mark is rejecting Gordon Brown's independence for the Bank of England. I think if you look at Andrew Bailey's record at the Bank of England and before that at the Financial Conduct Authority, it's really disgraceful, and it could have been called out more than a year ago. And if she wants to return the control of monetary policy and of interest rates to elected politicians rather than unelected bureaucrats, on that policy point, I completely agree with her.
Do you? You see, that's interesting, because I've never heard anyone else agree with that.
Well,
for the simple argument, and the reason it was moved in the first place back in '97 was that they're saying, well, when it comes to the economy, you don't want to be making political decisions. Governments will make decisions not necessarily for purely economic interests.
This is true, but they're elected, and technocratic decisions by an imbecile are far inferior to perhaps populist decisions made by elected politicians. We can kick them out. You and I can't kick out Andrew Bailey.
No.
And since Brexit, whatever you think about Brexit, democracy is a very important issue today. And if you take the libel laws being mobilised possibly by our weather forecasters, the Meteorological Office, against critics, if you take the Vardy versus Rooney case, another victory for a town called Sue, namely London, right? And all the lawyers are on TV, Carter Ruck, enjoying the limelight, just like our healthcare technocrats not so long ago. The people must have their say, and that includes control over monetary policy.
But what about the Monetary Policy Committee? I mean, you might not be a fan of Andrew Bailey, but, I mean, he's not making these decisions on his own. The committee makes the decisions.
He chairs that committee, if I'm not mistaken. And can you name the people on the committee, Stephen?
No.
Well, there we are. That's the problem I had with MEPs in the EU.
Or Simon Clarke, indeed, who we've been talking about.
Clarke,
sorry, Simon, if you're watching, but,
So it's time that people we voted for, were put in the limelight and didn't outsource responsibility to really fundamental matters of the economy, like interest rates, and say, oh, not our job, lads. Sorry, it's, it's out of our hands. That's no way to run a democracy in the 21st century.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Your thoughts on that, please, if you would. GBviews at gbnews.uk. James, let's have a look at something else which may really hit the economy, actually, which is UK companies cutting ties with China. This is in the Financial Times.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to say is that I'm amazed that I'm not amazed that the Financial Times, which is basically nowadays a pink version of The Guardian, attributes so much influence to the CBI. CBI is not what it was under the Thatcher regime. I once gave a slideshow at the CBI, and they were more disorganised than the TUC. And that was 20 years ago. So, having said that, I think the important thing here is, yes, if firms cut ties with China, there is a chance of greater inflation, although China isn't just characterised by low wages anymore, and it's a technological power as well. But the thing I have to laugh about, or be sad about, is the green claim that renewables are always getting cheaper. If you look at that closely, leave aside wind power, solar power, which is a dubious matter in cloudy Britain, is nearly all the panels are made in Xinjiang and are the product of slave labour by the Uyghurs. So I can't believe that, solar panels are going to get any cheaper because they're going to be inflationary like everything else. The claim that that's going to be cheaper than gas or nuclear is extremely dubious, and therefore we've got to inspect what environmentalists are saying, because they don't want to talk about China. They just want to talk about how you must stop using gas and everything else.
Isn't it interesting? The whole China thing at the moment is going back to the leadership debate with Rishi. I mean, when he was Chancellor, it's like, we need to work with China, we're setting up deals. And now he's actually a contender for being PM. We're not going to do any deals with China. Again, it's like that U-turn of opinion to get the right votes. But, I'm like everyone else at the moment because of the situation globally. It's like, I won't buy as much from China. So, you might spend a bit more money. Again, it's hitting us all in the pocket, isn't it? But I don't want to buy anything from China. I'd rather buy something British-made. Do you think you can find anything British-made? I mean, it's everything appears to be made in China.
Yeah, you can't pull out. I mean, you can cut off Russia economically with ease, but the integration in the world economy is such that whatever we feel about it, just about everything in here and just about everything, as you say, Dawn.
It's really hard, even though you can make a conscious effort to find something that isn't made in China.
Well, they've been the cheapest goods for decades, haven't they? So it's, breaking the...
Frightening how much we depend on countries like China and Russia to a certain extent for the, obviously...
And South Korea.
Yes, absolutely.
Got to be said. I mean, a lot of the tech is South Korean.
Yeah.
I think the good news is, if I may, that, the populace in China is getting more suspicious of the CCP, especially downtown Shanghai, where the repression, they've had robot dogs there with loudhailers telling people to stay in their flats for months on end.
That's weird.
And there's only so long that the middle class and above all the working class in China is going to put up with that. Yes, the Chinese Communist Party has 95 million members, but, watch the turmoil there because it's growing. And Xi Jinping faces a major test.
But you're never going to get... The problem with all that sort of talk is...
There's not a lot of it,
it's that you're never going to get... If anything was going to happen, you're never going to get a bloodless coup in a place like China, are you?
Oh, that's true, but, I noticed Roger Boyes, big opinion former on The Times, saying, the last thing we need now is unrest in China. I hear the argument, but what are you saying? And what is he saying? That we shouldn't support those people revolting against the Chinese Communist Party, that we want stability at any cost, and so on? China needs a big overturn. It's not going to be pretty, but I know whose side I'm on.
I can't go to China. I was thrown out of China not long after the Tiananmen Square thing. I was a journalist working out there, and I was legally working out there. I knew I was a journalist, but suddenly, halfway through the job I was working on, nothing to do with Tiananmen Square, it just happened to be the anniversary, they suddenly decided that they didn't want me in the country. So they took my passport, they took my money, they put me in a government hotel, which was basically a prison. The lock was on the outside of the door, and there was a very scary lady sitting at the end of the corridor monitoring where you came and go, and everywhere I went, I was followed. And in the end, they literally put me on the first plane out, escorted me to the airport, put me in the first plane to Hong Kong. And I've never applied for a visa since to try and go back. But that is a small taste of how they treat a foreign journalist. So, as you were saying, James, how they treat their own people is just like...
Completely arbitrary, and people can see that. And Xi Jinping's facing a major problem because you don't have to be a revolutionary in China to see that the zero COVID policy has been a complete disaster. And now he's wanting a third unprecedented term.
The robot dogs thing, that's scaring me. Robot dogs?
Yeah, with a loudhailer, as I say. But if I may top your story, or try to, Dawn, on the Chinese...
How dare you?
I mean, just to remember that they're human beings, right? I got stuck in Hong Kong when it was still Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region, and I was caught without the visa stamp or the right passport in no man's land or something like that, with the customs people and all of that. And then... it's one thing you learn about China when you go there. A 6'6" policeman, right, despite one's prejudices, took pity on me. A policeman, if you please, right? I've seen them bopping in a downtown bar in Shanghai, but that's another story. And he took pity on me and escorted me, probably breaking all the rules, into a safe bit, the British bit, when it was a bit British. And because he could see how upset I was, because I was a stateless person, just by getting the wrong side of a tensor barrier. So even one or two police, although they're universally hated in China, That's why they use men in white shirts to beat up demonstrators, not the police, because there'll be more of a reaction. But even this guy, it was a long time ago, had a human side. Let's not forget that.
Oh, no, well, it's the same with everything we talk about with Russia. We're not talking about Russians. We're not talking about the Chinese. It's the leaders.
It's the Kremlin and the CCP.
Yeah. Let's bring things a lot closer to home.
Shall we?
Dawn in the Daily Star, looking at Wagatha Christie.
Actually, every single paper. I mean, you expect the red top tabloids to do this story big, and the Sun and the Star have got it on page 1, but every single paper is covering this because 3 years, £3 million, 2 women who basically just needed their heads banging together in the first place have finally settled this case. So the Wagatha Christie between Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy. And
is it Colleen's fault? It's interesting you say about the 2 women needed their heads banging together. Colleen did what she did, right? She posted the results of her
Instagram
work,
investigation.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
But she didn't want this to go to court.
No, she didn't.
I'm no particular fan of Colleen Rooney. I don't know much about her, but she didn't want to bring this.
She didn't, and to be fair to Colleen, she did try to settle out of court several times before this case went to court. And it's very unusual for these cases to get to court. I mean, most of these sort of like libel actions are settled beforehand. So she didn't want to do it. And Rebecca Vardy actually pushed it. And look, Rebecca, the first rule of holes, and she was in a hole to start off with, is stop digging, especially in a court. The only people winning in this are, I think, the lawyers. I mean, because it was just a fascinating insight into the world of the wags, and I hate myself for being interested, but I am. and the judge, who was a female judge as well, I mean, she's used to dealing with very serious issues, human rights issues, etc., must have been like, what am I listening to here? What is actually going on? Getting your head around. But a very, very damning 70-page ruling. Judge described Rebecca as evasive, disingenuous, and her account events was wholly implausible. To be fair, Colleen and Wayne, to be fair, he was there by her side all the time, carrying her handbags, love that. He was there by her side, and, they come out of it very well. I mean, an honest, reliable witness was given clear and compelling evidence. So, and it's costing Rebecca Vardy a lot more. She can afford it, I'm guessing, thanks to her husband, Jamie, but a lot more money, and her reputation is actually in tatters.
You see, she says on the front of the Sun, Colleen, it's clear I was right. Becky, the judge, got it wrong. Well, I'm afraid she's not going to win this argument, is she?
Well, I mean, is she going to? I mean, can you appeal? Is she going to appeal? Is she going to drag this on even more?
Can you appeal against this?
Honestly, I don't know the legal ins and outs of it, but obviously there's the. It's very obvious that Rebecca was giving stories to the papers. I mean, she infamously sold that story to the News of the World when it was around about Paul Peter Andre and his chipolata, which he's had to live with all that time and has never answered back. So,
I think one thing about this story, I was watching the BBC lunchtime news. Sorry to betray.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. I'm going to put the knife in because they devoted 8 minutes, the first item, to this story. And now I understand that it takes up a lot of people's attention and all of that, but I've got to tell you that, the Taiwan crisis with Nancy Pelosi's proposed visit to Taiwan got 10 seconds against 8 minutes. And, we're only talking about World War III here. I mean, nothing important.
This was World War III. Come on, James. This was important.
But, I think it's important because, and the Guardian, the FT even, they're all going bananas about this case when they're not knocking tabloid journalism and saying, oh, how frightfully... beneath us.
This is the hypocrisy.
But then they go and do all of this.
The hypocrisy of the newspapers. I mean, but people are talking about it, and the point of a newspaper, every newspaper, is to reflect what people in the country are talking about.
And it's what everyone's talking about in the bars and the pubs,
exactly,
isn't it, really?
It is, but, one expected some sense of proportion, wrongly, from the FT and from the BBC.
Oh, come on.
I think it's also a bit of an escape, isn't it, for everything that everybody's dealing with in their daily lives. And it's just drama, and it's people that... all of us were obsessed with in the early noughties. The wags were on the front page of every tabloid press at the time, and now they're airing their dirty laundry.
And you know what?
It's a bit of a guilty pleasure.
You know what, Ellie? The one thing I took from this case, if I'm ever going to end up in court, I know the restraining order is in force at the moment, Stephen, but I don't want that court artist. Remember the court artist, the drawings? She made Wayne Rooney look like Spud You Like. It was dreadful.
It was not a good shot.
No, it wasn't. Sorry if you're watching. But...
well, there you go. On that point, what do you make? It's not in the papers today. What did you make of the first televised judgment in court?
Oh.
Well, I thought the judge sounded and looked very authoritative.
She was very good.
She made the right call. I haven't thought it through yet. I'm sorry to admit this so early, but about televising cases, you know.
I'm not. I mean, I did think
like
what was
that.
interesting was that it was a shot of the judge. We didn't even get to see the defendant, which I think is probably. But this is likely to progress. There's a lot of our viewers and listeners were messaging in saying it's likely to progress now to showing the whole case. And
Is it going to end up like Johnny Depp case where we saw...
Everyone's there with their popcorn.
Absolutely, where that was literally an ongoing soap opera. I mean, at the moment, it is like you can only show the judge, you can't show anyone else in the courtroom, you can't show the legal team, you can't show the defendant, you can only show the judge, and the summing up, it's one camera. The people there probably didn't even realise it was there. And I think in this particular case, it was a young lad who killed his granddad, if I remember rightly. But the summing up actually gave you a lot more nuance to what was going on, and that's what I quite liked. You heard the background of this lad, the fact that he had a
very troubled background.
Very, very troubled background, a lot of domestic violence, and he was doing it for his nan. Obviously, what he did was horrific and wrong, but you learned the nuance of what was going on and why that judgment was made, and that's why I thought it was quite useful. I mean, the Vardy case would have been interesting to have been beamed live with your popcorn, but I think I can't see it going the same way as America.
And I think you're totally right there, Dawn, actually, because so many people hear somebody being sentenced and they say, oh, that's too short or that's too long, because they haven't been sat in a courtroom and they don't understand the nuances, like you say. And actually, that case was such a good example of why it should be televised, because actually, once you hear the background of that young man, he was young, I think 25, and had been through really horrific circumstances, it made total sense. And
interesting.
Didn't see why that happens.
We've got 30 seconds left. William says, Stephen, please ask James if he agrees with the countries who are chopping down their rainforests to build on and progress their countries. Our green fields are no different.
Well, it's what I'd like to know from your correspondent is, has he got the numbers on the rainforest? You know, I like trees. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I do.
Don't be ashamed to admit it.
Trees are great.
It's a gag, you know. But this kind of knee-jerk green response that, you know, you want to defoliate the world, you love dirt and dust and you're dirty, not what he said, but where they like to go, I think does the environment a disservice, actually. Solar panels, just to go back to that, are terrible for environmental.
Right, we are out of time. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on. And don't go anywhere, because we've got all your top stories coming up in just a moment.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere. Some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud. We keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday. The risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday. And all the while, our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Another day of checking before you travel. That's the advice as rail services are severely disrupted in the latest bout of industrial action.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 30th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
And we're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, on your radio and online. So whatever you're up to today, you can take us out and about with you.
Yes, here are your top stories today. Train drivers at 7 operators across the country walk out for 24 hours over pay. The strike is expected to impact those travelling to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and football fans attending their first games of the season.
A housing revolution. Liz Truss pledges to help millions of renters buy their first home. The Tory leadership contender wants rental payments included in assessments for mortgages if she becomes Prime Minister.
Put your hosepipe away. Around 17 million Brits face fines of up to £1,000 if they use their hosepipe to water the garden, wash the car or fill up a swimming pool, as restrictions were brought in by Southern Water. The company says high demand and parched rivers has led them to this decision.
And it's Win Rooney. Colleen's court victory over Rebecca Vardy. We finally reached the climax of the Wagatha saga, so we'll look at what the characters do next.
And as ever, you can join in on any of our discussions this morning by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Loads of you getting in touch on a whole host of issues this morning, which is great. Anne has been in touch. She says, I'm a pensioner over 75 and like thousands of us, we're concerned about the energy bills, haven't had any financial help. Pensioners have always paid their bills first, but how on earth can they pay energy bills on a pension of less than £500 a month? Yeah, it's a very valid point. Now, Anne says, we're being insulted by the announcement that the £400 is going to be paid over 6 monthly instalments. MPs should be acting now. It's urgent. And that will come in, Anne, in October, and then it will be, what the figure is, it's £66 off your first bill, and then it depends quite how you pay your bill, but it is going to be taken off so you won't get the money, it's going to be taken off your bill. But as you say, if you're on less than £500 a month and your energy bills are, likely to go up to, on average, £500 a month from January, well, you just haven't got the money, have you?
It's not enough, is it? Nowhere near enough. We've also been talking about housing this morning. Paddy's been in touch. He says it's OK going on about people talking about affordable housing, but not everyone can afford to buy a house. What about social housing at an affordable rent? Very good point, yeah.
And Jane says, I'm of the firm view that we should not build on greenbelt land. Brownfield sites should be used instead, and they should be made more attractive to developers by scrapping VAT on them. We need green lungs from the benefit of our physical and mental well-being and the habitat for other species with which we share the planet. I'd agree with that. And I also think, it has to be said, we need to be spending more money revitalising the high streets, don't we? We seem to spend a lot of money trying to get these little shops in high streets that people still aren't going to in a lot of places. And I know people love the high streets. But what about turning all the big high streets into housing? You know, that property's already there. Revamp it all into housing. And then maybe you get a bit more traffic for your coffee shops and what have you.
But I want to see fewer coffee shops and more shops. I feel like they're all turning into coffee shops now.
Yeah, but no one's going there to use the shops.
I miss the shops. I miss physical shops. They're all closing.
It's that difficult situation, isn't it, where we like the shops, we like the idea of the shops, but the idea isn't enough. Liking them, it doesn't keep them in business. We've got to use them.
It is true.
It's our fault. We're not doing it.
Yeah, and it's just so easy online, isn't it? It really is dangerous, really, how quickly you can buy things, just a touch of a button. And it's there the next day for you, isn't it? It's like, why would you go into town, especially cost of petrol now? Why would you drive into town?
I needed a new phone charger the other day. And then, rather than go into town and actually try and find a shop that would sell it, I wouldn't know exactly where to go for this particular phone charger that I needed. Like a wireless thing. Get online.
Yes,
it's there the next morning at 10 o'clock.
You can see why they're going out of business. Just very quickly on the dress, we are talking about whether I look more like a fruit salad or a rhubarb and custard sweetie this morning. It's very important news, alongside the actual important news.
Yes, who's winning so far?
It's actually very tight. So on Twitter, we're on 51% rhubarb and custard. 48% fruit salad. A lady's also been in touch. I can't see her name right now, but she said I look more like a pear drop.
Pear drops,
or a strawberry starburst, says Angie.
Oh, pear drop.
So, you know,
I can see the pear drop analogy.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, if you look at the packets for rhubarb and custard or fruit salads, they are both exactly that colour.
Exactly the same.
So,
Trish said I look like a pear drop. So there you go.
I love pear drops.
It's making me hungry now, all the sweets.
I know.
Need to get some in the next break, Steve.
It's tempting. It's not the thing. Certainly not the thing for me to be eating. But there you go. Maybe a little treat.
Lovely, all the same. Yeah. Okay.
I remember the days of getting a 10p. You could get 10p pick and mix. You used to go to the local shop.
10p.
It was 10p for pick and mix.
For a bag.
Yeah. And I also remember. You see, you far too young for this, but remember getting halfpenny sweets.
No, you've lost me now. You've lost me.
Halfpenny chews.
Halfpenny?
Half a penny.
Oh.
You used to have half-penny pieces.
Oh, right.
You don't know that?
No, I don't know any of this. This is all a new language to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can have an education.
Get a bag of halfpenny chews. Yeah, there you go.
Anybody knows what you're talking about, do let me know.
Of course they do. Of course they do. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, our main news today, and we have to stop smiling at this point, Headley, because we're all being warned to brace for severe travel disruptions this weekend. Railway workers across Britain going on the most widespread strike since 1996.
Yes, members of the ASLEF union will stop work for 24 hours at 8 train operators, with some 5,500 staff walking out after talks broke down over pay.
Now, the strikes come as Birmingham hosts the first weekend of the Commonwealth Games. It also coincides with the opening day of the English Football League season.
Well, for more, let's turn to Stockport in Greater Manchester and let's speak to GB News viewer and former train dispatcher Stephen Bennett. Good morning to you, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. What do you make of these strikes then?
Well, I'd say they're necessary because people need a pay rise and the government's not coming to the table to offer that. So I don't really see what other options they're left with. It just so happens that the railways have good union representation, so that's why they're striking. Because I don't really see it as just rail workers. It's a nationwide problem. Like, a lot of people in a lot of industries need pay rises at the moment because there's not enough money coming in to pay the bills. So you're seeing it in the railways and other industries because they have good union representation. But I wouldn't say it's just a railway problem. It's a nationwide problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, certainly, I guess you would have been covered by the RMT, and it's ASLEF that's striking today. But the RMT were offered an 8% pay rise over 2 years, but they'd have to sign new contracts. They'd have to, look at working conditions and agree for people to work weekends more and work overnights more and things like that. Would that have been a good idea to take that offer, do you think?
Well, when I was working on the rails, I wasn't even a member of the union, to be honest. Like, I'm not like a big union backer per se, but on the offer, I'm not sure what it was, but when I was there, I was already working nights and working evenings for no extra pay. I had no overtime rate, no night rate, no weekend rate. So to add more stipulations and some pay, it doesn't really seem very logical. There's a lot of people like dispatchers, platform staff, cleaners, security, announcers, who are on like well below the 44,000 that Grant Shapps is saying that people earn. They're earning less than 30,000, less than 25. So I don't really see how you can be asking people to work longer hours with more stipulations. It's not really a pay rise, then, is it?
Well, no, in some ways it is a change of conditions. That's a fair point, but isn't that what... I suppose some of the argument would be, well, that's what the rest of us have to do. We've all got to work, on sociable hours and weekends and all the rest of it. And at a time when everybody is struggling, shouldn't rail workers be more willing to compromise?
But they already do work them on sociable hours. Like, they already work evenings and work nights. So... And yeah, like the rest of you should also have good conditions. I'm not saying the rail workers should have better conditions than other people. They should be for every worker.
Well, it's a valid point.
If you're doing a job that's you're told is essential, and you're coming home with not even enough money to live after you've paid the bills, then you're just going to end up with a situation like at the airports where people are going to get fed up. They're going to go to another industry. And you're going to end up with agency staff, and rather than having a few days where strikes are going on and having no travel, you're going to have permanently bad systems running because you're just going to have hastily trained agency staff rushed in, and that's just going to be a permanent state of affairs.
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point. Stephen Bennett, it's really good to see you this morning. Thanks for talking to us. And what an interesting perspective, actually. It's, it is that point where you think if people are saying we just haven't got enough money to live, but what you have to balance that up against is the nationwide picture,
yes,
which is, I guess, what politicians and the companies do, which is say, well, how can we start paying people inflation-busting pay rises?
Because that is
where's the money come from?
Yeah,
and that in itself becomes inflationary.
Yeah, I mean, if you give everyone an 11% pay rise, that's inflationary, isn't it? I mean, where do we go from there? It's very, very difficult. But I mean, even Simon Calder touched upon that, where companies cannot give everybody in the country an 11% pay rise. But then you've got ASLEF and the RMT who are saying that they want
do you just target
a pay rise of 11%? So I mean, how does this just continue forever? Is that where do we go from here?
Or does this need to be targeted now? Which the unions aren't targeting it. To be fair, they're just they're asking for this rise. Maybe we need to target on people who are on less than 25 grand or whatever.
People who are really going to struggle.
Make it, try and work it that way. It's very difficult. But I think with the terms and conditions thing, and again, I'd love your thoughts on that, gbviews@gbnews.uk, things have changed. And I think a lot of these contracts have been in place for a very long time. So perhaps you you get paid, double pay for a bank holiday, or as
Or a
Steve was
Sunday
saying
even,
there,
some of them.
night uplift if you do a night shift and all that sort of thing, which is great. I mean, it's fantastic if you can get it.
Brilliant.
But who else gets it? Now, I remember the days when I first started working, we used to get double time for bank holidays, and we used to get a night uplift payment when you did night shifts and things. All that went out the door decades ago now.
Yeah.
But some of these contracts are... And it's like bringing everyone together. I mean, if you've got it, if you get that now, you don't want to lose it. Of course you don't want to lose it.
No.
But it doesn't seem to be the way the rest of the country's operating at the minute.
Yeah, and now, of course, what we're seeing is fire and rehire contracts, aren't we, where people are rehired on, with
different terms and
different
conditions.
terms and conditions, often with fewer rights and fewer perks.
Which doesn't sound right in and of itself, does it? And I think perhaps what you'll gather from what we're saying this morning is that there is no easy answer to this, is there? There's no magic solution. There's no turn of phrase in a document that's going to say, right, everyone's happy now, and everything's going to be fine, because it just isn't that simple.
It's really not. But do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll try and share as many of those as we can.
Yes, we will. Oh, on which note, I've got one or two here. Bring back Boris, says Pixie. We are just wasting time. We need Brexit sorted. Now the pandemic's under control. We need immigration sorted and properly. We need to support our own people, not spend on those who walk into the country. We need energy prices bringing down, fracking introduced to make us self-sufficient. We need Putin stopping. We do not need infighting within the governing party. Well, I think a lot of people will sympathise with you, Pixie, to be fair. But it's a bring back Boris thing. How many, was there 14,000 or something people have, or it might be more now, have said they wanted
14,000 yesterday, yes.
They want Boris back in the leadership race, which I think is interesting. It's in a couple of the papers as well this morning. I mean, it's an interesting figure because it's not going to happen. I mean, it can't happen. It can't happen within the rules of how all this works. It can't happen.
But it's a sense of feeling, isn't it?
Yes.
Of the Conservative Party members, which I think is significant, because it was MPs and ministers who turned on Boris, and many people now think Rishi Sunak is a backstabber or a front stabber, even some people are saying. But 14,000 Conservative members still want Boris on that ballot paper. They still want him in office. And I know that lots of GB News viewers feel that way as well. That's the sentiment we're getting through.
But what is also interesting is Liz Truss seems to be almost unassailable at the moment, and part of her appeal seems to be this sort of return to core Conservative values, which people like within the Conservative Party membership. I should add that caveat. People seem to like that, but that isn't what Boris stood for. So people liked Boris, but they're supporting someone who actually doesn't stand for the same values.
He was more Churchillian, wasn't he, then?
Well, I mean, he was... I mean, someone...
That's what he liked to model himself on, anyway.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? He wasn't conservative in that sense, but people seem to like him just because of the personality and the charisma and the fact he sort of seemed to stick two fingers up at people who said you couldn't do something and just say, oh, we're going to do it. We're just going to do it. So it's very interesting. None of this is black and white. Your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
OK, let's bring you up to date with what's going on today. Former Tory leadership contender Tom Tugendhat has endorsed Liz Truss in the race to be Prime Minister in a huge blow to Rishi Sunak. Writing in The Times, Mr Tugendhat said that the Foreign Secretary's promises of tax cuts are based on true Conservative principles and that she can unite the party. He said both contenders have huge qualities and many talents, but that Ms Truss has an advantage on the world stage because of her cabinet position.
As we're just talking about, rail services will be disrupted today. Members of the Drivers' Union, ASLEF, are having a strike. The industrial action affecting train operators like Great Western, Greater Anglia and LNER, amongst others.
French and UK border forces are promising to improve delays across the Channel ahead of a busy weekend. Travellers could face 2-hour delays at the port of Dover in the coming days. Tens of thousands of cars were gridlocked last weekend. Authorities blamed a shortage of French border officers and a car crash on the M20.
At least 23 people have been killed in flash flooding in eastern Kentucky. Torrential rains have devastated the area, the governor declaring a state of emergency. Trapped homeowners were forced to swim to safety, others rescued by boat.
The governor of New York has issued an executive order in response to the growing monkeypox outbreak in the state and declared it to be a disaster emergency. According to data by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, New York has the highest reported cases of monkeypox in the United States and is now the epicenter of the outbreak.
Now, as we were just saying, Liz Truss has vowed to what they're calling unlock home ownership if she's Prime Minister. She says she's going to break down barriers by helping renters prove that they're ready to take on a mortgage.
Well, according to the government, more than half of today's renters could afford the monthly cost of a mortgage, but various constraints mean only 6% could immediately gain access.
Well, let's talk to the director of Priced Out, Freddie Poser, who joins us now. Good to see you, Freddie. What do you make of all of this? Because, I mean, it sounds good. A revolution, they're calling it in some of the papers this morning, but it's not actually new, is it? It would just be sort of extending this a little bit.
Yeah, we've heard this a lot, that people prove that they can pay this amount of money by paying their rent every month, and then they turn around and the mortgage lenders go, well, we can't approve you for this loan because of eligibility requirements. So I think that there's a huge amount to it. But, as I think we've said on GB News many times, the long-term issue is the lack of homes. It's not going to be a demand-side intervention that fixes this. So if Liz Truss really wants to unlock the British housing market and actually allow young people onto the housing ladder in a long-term and sustainable way, then she's going to need to enable a revolution in home building, not just home selling.
Yes, Freddie, I was just about to ask you about this because this is the issue, isn't it? So Liz Truss is pledging to help millions of renters by, paying the mortgage, but she plans to scrap national house building targets. So scrapping the plans for 300,000 new homes by mid-2020s. That's an issue, isn't it? Because, as you're saying, young people need affordable homes. That's the other side of this coin.
Absolutely. It's a real shame to see that actually both leadership candidates have some really bad ideas around housing. And some of them have some good ideas, but we need to see more homes built. The 300,000 figure, we know we need at least that for a number of years just to make a dent in the undersupply of housing that we've built up over the last few decades. So scrapping the national target it's not a good sign, but the fact is the government hasn't hit the national target in decades. So I'm much more interested in the actual policy detail around what's going to get these homes built, rather than saying, oh, we're going to build 300,000 homes, or we're not going to build 300,000 homes, and then you don't deliver either way. So I'm much more interested in the policy detail of what these candidates are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the detail we're not going to get for some time. That's the reality of it until one of them makes it into number 10. Within all of this, what it doesn't do is address the problem of deposits. I mean, whether there are more houses on the market or not doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly we're going to start seeing 95% or 100% mortgages coming back into place. So significant deposits are going to be needed, which I guess renters aren't really able to afford, or a lot of them.
Yeah, deposits are a huge issue because obviously if you're renting, it's very difficult, especially with a cost of living crisis on top of that, rising energy bills, and then you're being asked to save for 10, 25% mortgages. That's incredibly difficult because house prices have continued to skyrocket. But what we at Priced Out are saying is that we need to stop house prices getting higher anymore. We'd love to see them come down a bit, but let's start by slowing this house price rise and making houses more affordable to more people. Because even if you have to pay 10%, it's much better to pay 10% of a lower number. I think 95% or 100% mortgages, they keep getting bandied about. They're still a demand-side intervention. They're still about how can we, allocate our existing but far too small stock of houses. But we need to grow the pie. We need to create more houses for everyone.
Yeah, well, we shall see if what's going to happen with all of that. And I don't know whether it's going to be news that you're going to want to hear or not, Freddie, but we'll have to watch it very closely. Thank you very much indeed, Freddie Poser. Let's get the thoughts of one of you now, one of our viewers and listeners, Stephen Guy, who's in Southall in Nottinghamshire. Good to see you this morning, Stephen. I mean, what do you make of all of this? These announcements coming out from the candidates thick and fast as the voting prepares to get underway for who's going to get into number 10. Are you impressed by anything that you're hearing?
Yes, I'm impressed by what Liz Truss has had to say. I think she's right that we need a different approach, a better approach, a more radical approach. I think your previous speaker was talking about how people are assessed in terms of what they can pay. And it's a ridiculous situation at the moment where somebody that can't get a mortgage is actually paying out more in rent than the mortgage repayment would have been. And that's clearly wrong.
How do you think Liz Truss is doing so well so far? She seemed to have done well at the first hustings in Leeds. She is a Yorkshire woman. But the papers yesterday saying that a lot of personality came out. She went down well, at least with the members at that hustings. But there's still a long way to go, isn't there?
I think she's over the line. I just don't see that Rishi Sunak is a credible contender to become the Prime Minister, the leader of the Tory party. I think one of the points that Liz Truss has made, which seems crucial to me, is her determination that we need to grow the economy. She's had quite a bit to say about that, and that's, for me, that's a crucial aim.
What is it about Rishi Sunak that you think that he can't claw this back? I mean, lots of people are saying that he's a backstabber, a front stabber even, to Boris Johnson. Is it that narrative that you think is going to be impossible to shake off?
I think it is. For the Chancellor of the Exchequer to jump ship when we're in this very difficult economic situation was unforgivable. I think we've learned far more about the real Rishi Sunak since he abandoned the country, and he keeps changing his mind. He's all over the place with what he's saying now compared with what he's said in the past on VAT, for example. So he's just not coming across as being credible.
That's interesting. Well, what are your priorities? Because our paper reviewer guest this morning, James Woodhausen, was saying, we need to look at more detailed policy initiatives moving forward, and not so much about he said it's just a battle over tax at the moment. When is the most important matter to you the money in your pocket and the tax burden you face, or do we need to be looking at the more nuanced and global issues?
Obviously, Ukraine is a huge concern, and there's no getting away from that. But I think what people need, Stephen, is more reassurance. There are measures in place. Things are being done to try and deal with the cash problems that people are facing. But there's an awful lot of doom and gloom around still, and I'm not sure that people are seeing the real picture. I think what we need is more reassurance. We need clearer statements about what's going to be happening over 3, 4, 5 years' time, but over this next 12 months. So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see the strategy is in place, but I think it needs to be articulated far more clearly and better.
Stephen, it's really good to talk to you this morning. Tell me, how is beautiful Southall this morning? How's the Minster looking? Have you got a bit of sunshine?
Stephen, you know that it's Southwell.
Oh, come on. It was always, when I lived in Nottingham, I was always told Southall.
Oh, Stephen, no. No, it's Southwell. Southwell is beautiful. It's a great place to live. I'm privileged to be here. Wonderful people, great part of the country. We get lots of visitors here now, and that's a good thing. So, Ellie, we do have shops, and people do use them. So there's the answer. If you want to see the high street in action, come to Southwell.
Southwell. Is there a local debate over Southwell or Southwell then? Or are you locals all determined to stick to Southwell? To Southwell, I'll get it right, Dixon.
Well, I think it comes down to this, Stephen. I think if you live in our market town, it's Southwell. Right. If you're a visitor, then yeah, if you want to call it Southwell, call it Southwell. But the most important thing is that you come and see us.
Yeah, no, I'm a great believer is that you should do what the locals say. You should always do what the locals say. So Southwell it is. That's me told. I shall learn. Stephen, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Stephen. I'll be up to check out the shops.
Talking with you. Yeah.
Honestly, so there you go. Do you know what?
Southwell. That was so much confidence.
I lived in Nottingham for years, and it was always Southwell. It's Southwell. But there you go. If the locals say Southwell, then Southwell it is. I tell you what, it always strikes me this because it used to get my goat is, and it was dealt with a lot of the floods up in the lakes, whenever that was now, 10 years ago. Do you remember? And the Prime Minister and others went to Cockermouth, and they used to call it on all the news. You say Cockermouth.
Oh dear.
And it was, and everyone said it. Everybody said it. And I said to our reporter at the time, who was up there, it's Cockermouth, it's Cockermouth, it's Cockermouth. And no one ever paid any attention to me.
Oh dear. It's probably wise that they did.
But there you go.
Because one's a bit problematic.
Well, no, not really. But there you go.
Be careful how you say it.
So there you go. So that's it. I did pass on. I know when David Cameron went up there, I did pass on a message to someone I knew at the time in Number 10 and said, tell the Prime Minister it's Cockermouth. So when he went up there, he did say Cockermouth.
And
that was down to me. That was down to me. I got a message passed to David Cameron on that one, which was quite impressive at the time, I thought.
Very good. Very good, Stephen. You've redeemed yourself.
Stop blowing my own trumpet, shouldn't I, really?
Shall we?
We're going to have a longer look at the Conservative leadership race in a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere. Some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud. We keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday, the risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday, and all the while our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. It is 8:34. It's very good to have you with us this morning. I haven't looked at. Have you looked at the tweets yet? Have we got?
Yes.
Have we got any Southall versus Southwell? things?
Nothing on that yet. You have caused a stir with your halfpenny.
Halfpenny.
Right? Halfpenny.
Halfpenny.
Yeah, halfpenny. That's it. Somebody said.
How old are you? Very young.
Yeah. Mick said, we're not saying that. We don't ask a lady how old she
Oh,
is,
sorry.
Stephen. Mick says, the halfpenny sweet we got from the school tuck shop were blackjacks and fruit salad. They were 10p for 20 chews. Loved them. And let me just read you one more, because then we're going to be short for time. We're going to get told off. This is from Max. Max says, Ellie, I'm 63, so I remember a quarter pence being used for payment. Not sure if you could get a bag of sweets for that, though. I was only a toddler at the time.
Quarter pence. What would a quarter pence be as a? I don't know what that would be as coinage back then. All those years ago. Two p's.
Right. That would make sense.
Do you get 2 pence pieces now? I don't know. Anyway, our main news for you today. It's actually not our main news, but it's because we're sort of focusing. It's up there. We're focusing on the travel chaos, understandably so. But of course, the campaigns are still going on for who is going to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Yes, in an interview with Channel 4, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak defended his U-turn on VAT cuts and said Liz Truss's plan for vast tax cuts would put fuel on the fire on inflation in this country.
And the way we're going to get growth in this economy is by doing the things that actually drive productivity up. And that's by reforming business taxation, so we get companies to invest more. That's what I've said that we will do this autumn. Reform taxation so that companies innovate more and invest in R&D. Deregulate to take advantage of our Brexit freedoms, creating things like free ports, which I've done around the country.
These are all long-term. We're facing a recession now.
Yeah, but what we should do is focus on long-term growth, because that's what we need, sustainable growth, not a sugar rush boom that will make us all feel better for months, but then it runs out of control.
Let's talk to Andrew Bowie, Conservative MP for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine. Good to see you this morning. So you back Rishi, do you? You think he's coming out right? We need to look for long-term sustainability rather than immediate growth for the economy.
Yeah, well, no, look, we need to grow the economy, but we only do that by investing in the long term, getting inflation under control so that we can, in the long term, cut taxes. Rishi's absolutely right. You know, it would be the very easiest thing for him to do to go out now and say to members of the Conservative Party that I'm going to slash taxes arbitrarily across the board. But that would have an incredibly negative effect in terms of driving up inflation at the very time we should be driving it down. We've got to get inflation under control. We've got to grow the economy, and then we can be in a position to cut taxes. And everything that Rishi's been announcing thus far is designed to do just that. And I think it's very sensible, very pragmatic, and ultimately a very conservative point to hold.
Enough. Plenty of people would agree with you, Andrew. What would you say to Anne, who's 75 years old, or more than 75, and she's facing energy bill crisis? It's looking at, on average, £500 a month by January. That's what we've been told. She gets less than £500 a month in her pension. What do you say to people like that who are looking at these two candidates and saying, we want the person who's going to take some immediate action to dig us out of a very big hole?
Yeah, obviously, all of us, all members of Parliament, have got constituents that are really struggling at the minute. And of course, they look at the forecast for how energy prices are expected to go up. And it's very uncomfortable and very frightening for a lot of people. That's why Rishi Sunak raised the national insurance threshold to give people, in effect, £300 back. It's why he's giving £150 per person back. It bans A to D council tax, why he took £400 off the average energy bill. And, he will do more as the circumstances allow. We will have a budget in the autumn at which whoever is the Chancellor of the Exchequer will be setting out what we will do in the short term to very much help the British people. Let's not forget, this is the guy who, when Chancellor, created the furlough scheme that saved 11 million jobs in a matter of days, saved thousands of businesses from going bust with the bounce back scheme and other support measures to support them, introduced ETAP to help out that saved so many of our hospitality industries from going bust over the summer of 2020. So I think when you look at it in the round, Rishi has demonstrated by his actions as Chancellor that he's very, very willing and able to deliver short-term measures to support people who are struggling, but that should not distract from what we've got to do to grow the economy in the long term so we can get to that high growth, high wage, high skilled economy that we all want to see.
But Andrew, and good morning to you, one of the biggest criticisms of Rishi Sunak right now is that he is a backstabber, some people even saying a front stabber to Boris Johnson. A previous guest just said that he had left the country in the lurch, he'd abandoned the country. Is it possible for Rishi Sunak to shape this narrative?
Look, I just think it's just completely patently false. I mean, Rishi Sunak resigned for what we don't need to go into the reasons why. He found the situation untenable and undefensible. He wasn't the first minister to resign, and a huge number of ministers resigned alongside him. There was no orchestration, there was no coup. People in government just took the decision that they could not defend what was going on anymore and that we needed a change. That's not to distract from the great work that Boris did, especially getting Brexit done through the COVID pandemic, getting the big calls right and supporting Ukraine. But over the last few months, the situation in government has become unsustainable and frankly, government wasn't functioning. And so Rishi took the decision that he had to step down. And we've got now in Nadeem Zahawi, a fantastically competent Chancellor. So the idea that Rishi left the country in the lurch with nobody with their hands on the reins, on the purse strings, as it were, in the Treasury is simply nonsense. Nadeem Zahawi is doing a great job as Chancellor, and Rishi would do a great job as Prime Minister were he to win this election.
Yeah, actually, I spoke to Priti Patel that week when all this was kicking off, and she said, "Whatever I think, I can't resign as Home Secretary because I have a constitutional duty." And actually, those sort of feelings were echoed by Ben Wallace, who said, I've got a constitutional duty. Well, Rishi Sunak had a constitutional duty. He could have called for the Prime Minister to go without actually stepping down. It doesn't wash, does it? People aren't buying that argument.
I think it would have been completely unacceptable for somebody to retain a position such as the Chancellor while saying they had no confidence in the Prime Minister. Let's not forget, Sajid Javid resigned as Health Secretary moments before Rishi Sunak resigned, and numerous other ministers with hugely important positions such as the Solicitor General and a whole range of others took a step back that week because they found the situation was unsustainable. And if we go back a few years, back in 2018, I think you'll find that Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary had a constitutional duty when he stepped down from Theresa May's cabinet back in July or June or July 2018. So I don't think that argument has much sway, to be perfectly honest with you. Rishi Sunak took the decision that the situation was unsustainable, the government needed to change, and that he was the best person to implement that change, and that's why he declared that he was running for leader.
Andrew, we have had declarations for Liz Truss from Ben Wallace and Tom Tugendhat. That's just in the last 2 days alone. And the latest polling has put Liz Truss 25 points ahead. Some people saying the leadership race is already sealed off. What do you say to that?
That's nonsense. We're at the very early stages of this leadership election. Let's not forget it was only 2 weeks ago that people were writing Liz off. People were saying that Penny Mordaunt would be in the final two alongside Rishi. Rishi won comfortably the ballot of Conservative members of Parliament. He's now going out to the country. We've only just started the process of going and holding hustings for Conservative Party members the length and breadth of the UK. The more people see of Rishi, I'm determined, the more they will remember why they fell in love with him during the pandemic, and they will realise, like I have, that he's the best person to take on the job of being Prime Minister. That said, look, if Liz was to win, I think she'd do an excellent job. I just think Rishi is the better candidate.
Okay. Andrew Bowie, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let us know what you think at home or whether you're out and about today. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And because we're talking about money, lots to talk about money today. Quarter penny was a farthing.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go. Lots of you getting in touch. Now, that's before my time. Decimalisation happened, I think, just before I was born.
And you've had a reply to Southwell as well, Stephen, on Twitter. Maria says, it's Southwell, Stephen. We live not far from that beautiful area. Great shops, Ellie. I was moaning about the High Street earlier, if you missed that one. Nice market, good pubs and cafes. The Minster is amazing to visit.
Minster's beautiful.
Yes.
It is beautiful. Well, there you go.
We should make a visit then.
Oh, yeah.
We should go together. Why don't we do a working holiday?
A working holiday
Thailand.
to Southwell. No, Southwell would be better. There you go. Lovely. Yeah, it's what the locals think. That's what matters.
Yeah.
What the locals think. Liz Kershaw's just been in touch, actually, because she lives close to Toaster, which looks like...
Toaster?
Towcester.
Oh.
Doesn't it?
Where's that
Toaster.
then?
Toaster, Northamptonshire. Oh. There you go.
Sure, it's a lovely part of the world.
Oh, Toaster's very nice. You've got a big race course and everything there. Anyway, we've got the papers heading away in just a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Morning to you. It is 8:46.
Yep, time to go through the papers now. Here with us this morning is James Woodhousen and former editor at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Great stories to go through here. James, I'm going to start with you. The price of tea bags going up.
Well, I'm a coffee man myself, but I'm just finding out that I've got no quarrel with Tetley, but if you take Tetley, They're getting most of their tea from Africa. And I find it very difficult to believe that Africa, especially African workers' wages, are swept by the price increases that we know about. And I'm bound to say that if you look at Centrica, say, in the profits it's made and so on, it's not all economics, it's not greed either. That what companies are doing are seeing the inflation headlines and passing on their costs and then some. And I think that's what's happening with tea bags, right? We're drinking less of them, by the way, although there's a big uptick in
I'm doing my bit to keep the tea bag industry going.
No. I indulge occasionally, but I think this desire to profit from, the inflationary climate is reprehensible.
But haven't they got other costs here in the UK, presumably, which are impacting them?
Yeah, but I still don't, I'll admit...
It might be the packaging's done over here or something, I don't know.
And there's that. Well, and just on that, one of the great failures of our times is to refuse the ability of Africa to industrialise and take on the packaging and the processing and the branding and the design that goes with, the goods, the commodities they produce. So, they are banned from doing that by the EU, by our green friends, because the hostility to African industrialisation is really an unspoken undercurrent throughout the West, really. It's a great pity. They're not to blame for the price increases. You're probably right, Stephen, that it's more something that's going on here with the processing, the packaging and so on. And I think that's very sad.
Oh, dear. Teas are expensive anyway.
Everything's expensive now, though, Stephen.
God, it's terrible.
But that's what we're going to see, isn't it? The cost of all commodities.
Everything's going up.
Drink champagne instead.
Oh, is that getting cheaper?
No, sadly not. No. It was a thought, because we will be needing it this weekend.
I was about to say, it's a great link there, Dawn.
Seamless link. See what I did?
You took it. Fantastic.
Coming home, it's
Oh,
not
Joe,
gonna...
hate that song. Hate that song.
David Baddiel, would you like to have words?
Don't be miserable.
But it gets bloody touted out every blooming time there's a football match. And when does it ever come home? Yeah, never.
It could
never.
though tomorrow.
Never.
It could.
Tomorrow,
It could.
5 o'clock, Wembley, Germany. Not mentioning penalties. Absolutely thrilled to say that most of the papers have actually got the England women's team on the main news pages rather than just the sports pages.
Right.
Because if this was the boys playing Germany at Wembley in a final tomorrow, it'd be wall to wall, wouldn't it? Front pages, pages and pages inside. Yes, it would, Stephen. Pay attention. We'd all have our faces painted, we'd all have England flags on. Even you'd be wearing an England kit.
I do not care about the Lionesses. Let me be honest. I don't care. I couldn't see a fig. But then I don't care about the Lions either. So at least I have equality in my dislike for it all.
Well, this is true. Any case, the rest of the country, Stephen aside, are getting behind the girls tomorrow. I don't even care if you don't like football. We have to support the girls. We are doing it. But what I really like about this is it's actually encouraging women's sport in general. The serious side of it is, and there's a brilliant piece in the Daily Mail done a spread on the England players when they were cubs. I hate this, but I know you know where I'm going. The Lionesses when they were cubs. The Guardian have done The Nation has fallen in love with grassroots girls football. The winners are going to be the Lionesses. Parents of the Lionesses in the Daily Mail revealed their pride. Get it? Pride.
Oh, God.
I know. I'm not writing this.
I'm with you. I was a bit prejudiced before, but I saw that back kick one of them did, and that was, pure ballet. I mean, whoops. What I do object to is our liberal left friends saying, there are not enough black women there. I think this has got nothing to do with football, everything to do with their prejudices. As a male, I'm afraid to say heterosexual, I've got to say...
Don't apologise for being heterosexual.
It's a gag, Stephen. I'm bound to say...
Yes, I know, but we'll get emails and things.
All right. Don't worry about the emails. Grow a hard skin.
Oh, I knew where you were going with that comment.
I did. I can say... No, I can't say that.
The thing... I'm bound to say, well, look, why are there so many pigtails? Why so many blondes? Shouldn't we have... bald women on the team as well.
If they're good at football, fair
absolutely.
enough.
But it just shows how ridiculous this critique of non-diversity is. Really.
But Alessia Russo scored that amazing back heel, and if that had been Lionel Messi going on about it, the world would be talking about it because she's female. An amazing goal. I mean, you watch it and you're like,
Incredible.
wow. But you know what? Only 44% of secondary schools in this country actually offer football as an opportunity to young girls. Go and play hockey instead.
Or
You know, when I
netball,
was a kid, we had boys in our school. We had to stand and watch them play football, while we had to go and play hockey. I think it's astonishing.
What about lacrosse?
What?
Oh,
I went to school in East London. But I mean, it's like, you know, it's astonishing that we are still talking about girls not playing football in school. Why aren't we? It's
Well,
a national
that's
sport.
what FIFA is saying, aren't they, about this whole Lionesses momentum that they've...
Well, yeah.
What did your mum say? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
No, I was going to say, it's all well and good, and it's a fair argument. My niece played football in school. I actually played hockey. We had hockey. The boys had to do hockey at
Oh,
school.
really? No, hockey's dangerous.
We had to do everything. Oh, it was awful. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you just had to do a bit of everything. Not that we did netball.
See, you
but
didn't do netball.
Didn't do netball. But no, equal opportunities for all. Fair
Yes.
enough. I'm totally for that. But when it comes to actually watching the football, I'd rather watch paint dry. There you go. I'm
It's
just
sold
saying.
out Wembley tomorrow. I can't get a ticket.
Well,
so if anyone's got a spare one.
Good. I mean, good for them.
Apparently
There's
they're
nothing
going
against
for
that.
£1,500.
Wow.
Need a ticket now?
All right,
As I said,
so
if anyone's got a spare one, hello.
spare free one.
Yeah, if you've got a ticket, do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes,
Be in
James.
touch.
Looking at second mortgages in the mail.
Yeah, well, you know, this is part of the cosmetic solutions to the housing crisis that I think are so misguided. You know, if you look at the numbers, I've got a spreadsheet, but I won't bore you with it. Right?
No.
If you look at second homes, foreign-owned homes, self-built homes, and I'm sad to say manufactured homes, the other ones I don't care about, they're all tiny at the moment. You know, it wouldn't make a dent, and one building society, you know, telling people off for having second homes. I don't have a second home. I often don't like the people having second homes, but that ain't the solution.
No.
What the solution is what your previous guy was saying before, Freddie Poser. He's absolutely brilliant. You know, let's get to the policy detail. Let's talk about supply side. Let's talk about, making millions of homes and not just sort of single out these rich second homeowners.
You keep going on about manufactured homes, but prefabs. The prefabs, and then you build them on site.
Because the prefab that Michael Caine occupied in the late 40s is going to be different from the prefab that we make today.
When you look at prefabs now, it's a totally different ball game, and surely that would be an easier way of doing it.
Correct. Well, let's get rid of the stigma around that. Make the point that they'd be built under, you know, a roof, not rain.
Yeah.
That they would be solar panels, if they're any good, built in from the start, rather than people falling off a roof. You know, insulation, you name it, it's the way to go. We do it with iPods and computers. Why can't we do it with houses?
Yeah.
It's a social stigma around it, isn't it? I mean, I remember my grandparents' generation in the East End and sort of like, you know...
Of course.
The prefabs. I mean, you didn't live in a prefab. It wasn't the thing to do. I mean, what's wrong with them?
But Caine himself said his one wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And
there's plenty of prefabs still about now. And people, I know some people who live in them love them.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick look at Eurovision in the Guardian Dawn.
Right, OK, what city? We have obviously got Eurovision next year, obviously because it can't be held in Ukraine, who were the winners.
And somewhere like Newcastle.
Well, this is...
Newcastle would be good, yeah.
The cities are all fighting for it now.
Who fancies it?
Right, well, Sheffield is up for it. Where else? I mean, we can't... Obviously, Brighton are up for it as well, but Brighton have already done it. Didn't ABBA win it in Brighton? When
I don't know.
ABBA won it? See?
The Brightonian Greens would never allow it.
They'd never allow it, no.
No. Glasgow. Glasgow's the bookie's favourite.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Never been there before.
Sheffield, when was there ever something huge like that in Sheffield? I say Sheffield gets my vote.
Sheffield.
Yeah. There you go. We're out of time, so that's it. Sheffield's going to host Eurovision.
Oh, can't we talk about football some more, Stephen? Go on, please.
No.
He's had enough.
I know, I'm just not a football fan.
He's pulling the plug.
There you go. I am pulling the plug.
Cancelled.
We're going to be back in a couple of minutes after a look at the weather. Don't go anywhere. Not cancelled. We don't cancel.
No.
There you go.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere, some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud, we keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome, though, across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that, though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday, the risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday, and all the while our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Check before you travel. That's the advice as rail services are severely disrupted in the latest bout of industrial action.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday the 30th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're online, we're on your radio, we're on your TV. So whatever you're up to, you can take us with you.
You've got no excuses. Here are your top stories today. Train drivers at 8 operators across the country walk out for 24 hours over pay. The strike is expected to impact those travelling to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and football fans attending their first games of the season.
A housing revolution. Liz Truss pledges to help millions of renters buy their first home. The Tory leadership contender wants rental payments included in assessments for mortgages if she becomes Prime Minister.
Put your hose pipe away. Around 17 million Brits face fines of up to £1,000 if they use their hose pipe to water the garden, wash the car or fill up a swimming pool, as restrictions were brought in by Southern Water. The company says high demand and parched rivers has led them to the decision.
And Rooney wins over Vardy. We'll look again at the Wagatha Christie trial.
And as ever, you can join in on any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, let's kick straight off then with the rail strikes, which are going on today. Could be about 50% of services knocked out. Passengers are being warned to brace for severe travel disruption all weekend long, actually, as more railway workers across Britain go on what is the most widespread strike since 1996.
Yes, members of the ASLEF union will stop work for 24 hours at 8 train operators, with some 5,500 staff walking out after talks broke down over pay.
Well, it comes, of course, as Birmingham hosts the Commonwealth Games this weekend, and it coincides with the opening day of the new English Football League season.
Well, earlier we spoke to travel editor of The Independent, Simon Calder, who told us how widespread this strike is.
Yes, King's Cross Station is such an interesting place to be here because we have over to the right LNER, the main operator on the flagship rail line, which is, of course, from here to Yorkshire, North East England and into Scotland. They have cut back services. So, for instance, there's only one return trip between Leeds and London today. There is a train every 2 hours between here and Edinburgh, stopping at a few places in northern England. And then there's a train every hour or so to York, but a really reduced service. And yet at the same time, you've got, for example, Grand Central and Lumo, which run trains from here as well, doing a pretty normal service. But warning, it's going to be incredibly crowded. And over to my left at St Pancras Station, well, that's the home of Eurostar, East Midlands Railway and Thameslink, all of whom are running normally. And that's because this is a fight between ASLEF, the trade union, and a number of train operators, but by no means all. And depending on your journey, you may well be able to travel today. We are actually going to see a kind of, in 2 weeks' time, a much bigger strike, because that will bring in Avanti West Coast, which runs from London to the West Midlands, North West England and into Scotland, and also Cross Country, which does lots of stuff, particularly centred on Birmingham. If, for example, you wanted to travel on the Great Western region, and that's a really significant one, as you can imagine this time of year, there are no trains serving Devon and Cornwall on Great Western. Nothing serving from London, Paddington, South Wales. The only link they've got, once an hour, shuttling between London, Swindon and Bristol. But on South Eastern, also affected by this strike, there are no trains at all. So if you were heading for France, sorry, there's a very, very noisy motorbike over there. If you were heading for Dover, Folkestone, any of the beautiful Kent resorts, well, you're not going to get there on the train today. The rail unions feel that they most definitely have the upper hand. They feel that they've got a lot of public sympathy. They're saying, yeah, the fact that we want to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% shouldn't stop other people from getting it. We should all be after it. But actually, there's something much more nuanced going on behind the scenes here. Train drivers and other rail employees are employed very often on incredibly arcane, out-of-date conditions where, for instance, in a lot of train operators, working on Sunday isn't a normal day of work, and people will only come in and do it on overtime. Now, everyone agrees that that's got to change, but the unions, in particular ASLEF, the train drivers union, doing all it can to extract every single percentage it can for changing those terms and conditions. So it isn't just a matter of finding a number which might be 6% and saying, OK, we'll take that as a pay rise. They are saying, OK, we are going to, we might make Sunday a day of work, but we're going to need an extra 10% or something to reflect the cut in earnings because so many drivers make a fair amount of overtime on Sundays. So that's going on at the same time as the government saying, hang on, rail revenue has collapsed because people aren't commuting nearly as much as they might. And by the way, we spent £16 billion keeping every single rail worker in a job during the COVID pandemic, which is very, very different, for example, to the airline industry.
Well, we also spoke to the former RMT Assistant General Secretary Steve Headley and put it to him that people are really starting to get a bit fed up.
Well, I think everybody's fed up to the back teeth with what's going on in this country. We've got inflation rampant. We've got energy prices going through the roof. We've got unrestricted profit taken by these energy giants. People haven't had a pay rise in nearly 3 years. Their standard of living has gone down by 20% in real terms. And people have had enough, and that's what we're having, people going on strike. And I just hope it becomes a generalised strike wave.
You think there should be a general strike?
Yes, absolutely.
But what's the potential outcome of this? Because there is no way that people can get a pay rise on top of inflation across the board.
Well, why not? We have
because that would push inflation through the roof.
OK, but that was a rhetorical question. The actual driver of inflation is not wages. Wages have been suppressed, really, for the best part of a decade, in the public sector at least. What's driving inflation is profiteering companies. If you look at the FTSE top 100 companies, the top 100, they have a record 70% paid out extra in dividends. If you look at the energy companies, one of them, 1.3 billion in the first 6 months of this year. That's up 500% on the entire profit that they made last year. So the myth that wages are driving inflation is just wrong. We've got the energy companies. You've also got the war in the Ukraine. You've got the backlog of the supply crisis during COVID, the supply chain crisis. So inflation is rampant, not because of wages. And of course, if inflation goes up, people's wages have to go up to equal that. We've also had in this past 30 years, and you can check this out, I'm not just making this up, we've had the largest redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich as a percentage of gross domestic product of the nation's wealth. And it's got to stop. It's got to be reversed. And people will just not sit there and let their homes become cold because they can't heat them, because they've got no gas. And people will say, well, the gas company can't cut you off. Well, they can, because people using cards and key meters are cut off when the meter runs out. People won't sit there and let that happen. They won't sit and let the lights go off. They won't sit and let grannies freeze to death in the winter, because we've got profiteering companies. And the answer is quite simple. The government have to legislate. The government have to nationalise these companies, like France has just done with EDF. And they've got to make sure that this inflation crisis is brought under control.
Steve, what would be reasonable to you? Because there have been discussions, there have been offers on the table. I mean, you're talking about the rate of inflation there. So is what you'd be looking at 10% pay rises across the board? And then if that's what you're looking for, where would that come from? Is that from the profits of the company?
Well, I have to say, right, I think the trade unions have been absolutely too reasonable. They've gone in demanding an inflation pay rise, and it's an April date, which is 7%. And inflation's already 9.2, predicted to be 11 by the end of the year. That's on top of a 2-year pay freeze. So, I mean, I have to say, I kind of smell a rat, because if you go in asking for 7%, you're probably going to end up with lower than that. I don't know why the unions have done that. I don't know why they've done that.
The RMT was offered 8%. Wasn't it? Yes, they were.
That's just not true. When? What are you talking about?
But we interviewed. I can't remember his name. Who's the boss? He was on the show a couple of days ago and said they were offered 8%, but with Mick Lynch said they were offered 8%.
To do what?
That was the pay settlement they were offered in these negotiations. They were offered 8%, but what they didn't like were the terms and conditions attached to it.
Oh, no. Well, they weren't offered a straight 8% by any means. What they were offered was about 3%, and the rest came with strings like job cuts, smashing up terms and conditions, putting people out of work.
New contracts were part of the deal.
Well, new contracts, and what that would mean, they would get rid of thousands of staff, and the people that were left over would have to pick up all the terrible shift patterns that would necessitate. So their work-life balance would be absolutely hammered. Then you would have allowances taken away. So we'd be giving them one hand and taking away with the other. So I mean, if they offered a straight 8%,
well, it was 8% over 2 years.
Well, that's 4% then, isn't it?
Well, no, but no.
That's 4%.
No, but you're talking an 8% rise within 2 years. That's what it works at. That's what it works at, and that's how Mick Lynch phrased it.
But that's a pay cut. But that's a pay cut.
Well, it's a pay cut
in real terms.
But what's interesting in all of this, and some people may say, look, you're making valid points, right? But all of our viewers and listeners who get in touch, the vast majority are against these strikes. Now, they, like everybody else, the vast majority of people, have also taken this 20% pay cut in real terms that you talk about for your members. They've had it. They still don't support the strikes.
Well, to be quite honest, I don't think that your views are quite representative of the British public, to be quite honest. You know, not many people get up and sing God Save the Queen and stand like that every morning in front of the TV. But the reality is this, the people out there need to raise their expectations. Every worker out there deserves a pay rise. Every worker should be getting at least inflation for this year, because they've already had a 2-year pay freeze. Some in the private sector haven't. They've had, little bits of money here and there, but it hasn't kept pace with inflation. And we have to educate people that workers can't be keeping paying for the mistakes of the bosses and the mistakes of the government. The government have exacerbated the COVID crisis. The government have let inflation become rampant. They've got to pay the bills, and they can do that quite easily. They can nationalise the utilities, the gas, the electric, the oil companies, and they can put that money into the exchequer and use it for the good of everybody in the country.
We can't. To be fair, on nationalisation, it's not that straightforward, is it? You've got to. You don't just take it back. You've got to buy it back.
Well, why? Nobody compensated the British public when they privatised it, did they? Nobody came up to Jack Jones living down my street and said, "Here, we've just sold off your public utility. Here's 50 quid." That didn't happen.
Well, no, but it went into the public coffers, didn't it?
Well, did it? I never seen it.
It did. It went into the exchequer and therefore gets used.
They can put out big tats that can nationalise Russian companies, seize Russian companies. Why can't they do it with the gas companies and electric companies?
Well, that's not how it works, is it? I mean,
it's worked with Russian companies. Why doesn't it work? They're parliament. They're supposed to be a sovereign body that runs this country. They can pass a law to do anything they want.
But that would be
the will isn't there.
But that would be taking money away from shareholders.
Well, that would be taking money away from the rich and giving it to the poor. Yes, that's exactly what we want.
Well, except not all shareholders are rich. I mean, don't forget when they sold these companies off, anyone could buy shares. You don't have to be rich to buy shares in British Gas or whatever it was.
That was 30 years ago when people bought their 2 quid shares or whatever. That's all gone now. We all know multinational corporations run all these companies, be it former British Gas, the electric, EDF, all of them. And some of them have actually got their national government have got shares in them. Like EDF, you know, that's been taken up by the French. So if the French can do it, if other countries can do it, why can't Britain do it?
Well, what do you think? GBViews at gbnews.uk, I imagine, gets a few of you hot under the collar, but, you know, maybe he makes a fair point.
Yep.
All views welcome.
All views welcome on all of the topics that we've been discussing this morning, and lots of you have been in touch. We're going to go through as many as we can now in just a few minutes. We've been talking about water, obviously the hosepipe ban, which is coming into place in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight on Friday. This is from We Don't Have a Name, who says the southern UK has been left again without water due to leakage and lack of investment. Population growth in the southeast must be taken into account as the discharges of water companies into rivers. Thank goodness we live in the northeast. There's been rain this morning and I'm going to wash my cars when it's stopped. Well, good for you.
Do we really have to listen to a weatherman on holiday in Thailand giving a lecture on global warming? Didn't stop him going on holiday. A working holiday to write a book, really? But doing his research, I guess. It's chucking it down here in Barrow-in-Furness. That's where I'm from. So my day out to Fluteborough Steam Gathering out the window today. Fluteborough Steam Gathering. The steam gathering. All the different steam Yeah, they've got steam engines. Yeah, well, no, because it's all the steam locomotives and everything. Everything used to be powered by steam years ago. So there you go, and that's from Tony Tucker in Barrow. Morning to you, Tony. The Flukeburgh Steam Gathering. I bet that's quite a good day out, actually.
Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it?
But it must be really chucking it down if it's put you off going there.
There's petrol. Lots of people talking about petrol unleaded in Hockley in Essex. That's near where I'm from, look. £1.67, down from £1.98. Brilliant, says Sandra. In Holbridge, I know exactly where that is. I used to work there. Hockley in Essex.
There you
Morning
go.
to you, Sandra. Thanks for tuning in.
But Bernard says the price drops to 167. There's a collective sigh of relief, but that then becomes the new normal, and we all end up paying 40p extra on a litre compared to a year ago. Yeah,
that's true. And do you remember in lockdown it was 99p? Do you remember those days?
Do you know what? Even the idea of it being 127, as Bernard remembers, is that's beyond my ken. Actually, now I just can't get my head around it being that cheap. Linda says, in terms of the Prime Minister, because we're talking about the ages of the Prime Ministers, Rishi's 42.
Stresses Stephen out.
It does stress me out. Liz Truss is 47. So they're both younger than me. Linda says, in terms of Prime Minister, the younger the better. More in touch with the trends of society and have a better insight into the modern world. I think, Linda, you're probably about... I think 40s is a good age, realistically, because they've got experience, they've got life experience, but also they're young enough to deal with stuff. So I think you're probably right, Linda.
Yeah.
But doesn't it just make you feel a bit old?
There's loads of world leaders who are quite
on.
young now, though, like Macron, Trudeau. He can't be old.
Trudeau's 50, 51, something like that,
Well,
I think. Macron.
I'm putting him on the spot now.
Macron's about... Is he sort of late 40s? Something like that. But there you go.
I think it could be a new trend, Stephen.
Well, it's that Austrian Chancellor who's now out of a job. He was 31. Yeah, he was 31. It's like, oh my God.
Amazing.
Really? Well, there you go. I'm
Impressive,
afraid it is a sign of getting older when you think everyone is just too young to do their jobs. There you go. So it's the way it is. It's what can you say? Now, the government has announced how all households in England, Scotland and Wales are going to get £400 to help with rising fuel bills. We'll start to get the payments in October, I think.
Yes, the money, part of the Energy Bill Support Scheme, will be paid in 6 instalments. Households will see a discount of £66 applied to their energy bills in October and November, and £67 a month from December to March 2023.
So how is it all going to work? Consumer champion from How to Save It, Will Hodson, is here. Good to see you this morning. First and foremost, let's talk about the actual figures, because I mean, look, any amount is welcome. Let's not knock it, but it's not going to make a huge dent for a lot of people.
No, I mean, it's a drop in the ocean, you could say, but on the other hand, you've got some pretty parched soil out there for whom every single drop makes a difference. £400 is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, only about 12% of what the average bill is going to be from October onwards. But there's a worry that you can get that £400 at all, because if you pay by direct debit, it gets put on there automatically. If you've got a smart prepayment meter, it's going to get put up onto your credit automatically. If, on the other hand, you've got a non-smart prepayment meter, and that's more than half of prepayment meters, the key ones, you don't get that automatically. It comes through the post. You might get a text. And the worry is those people won't get the £400 at all. Right.
So what can they do? What can people do to sort that out?
I'm afraid you have to stay vigilant. You've got to keep an eye out. Make sure you know you're entitled to it. Make sure you know you have to actually be on your toes to keep an eye out for the post, for the text, and use it. And if you've got neighbours or family who are in that situation, try to help them out as well, I would say.
Well, one of the points that keeps being spoken about is the fact that this £400 payment is going to everybody, so households that don't need it. But do you think there is a point that if bills are averaging £4,000 is what we're looking at now, like you said, this £400 payment would only cover 12%. Is it a point that this is affecting more people than anybody that's been affected before?
It's biting for absolutely everyone. There's no doubt about that. In terms of targeted help, which is the key thing, I think, you've got to remember you've also got an uplift in the winter fuel payment of £300 for pensioners. You've got £650 of additional benefits for particular means-targeted benefits as well. And you've got help on council taxes for people in certain bands. So we are targeting it that way. And you have to, fish fish around for a kind of another idea that's going to help in a targeted way, because cutting VAT, which is what we've heard now in the leadership election, that is the opposite of targeted. Stephen's got a bill of £5,000 a year and he gets VAT off. That's 250 quid. If someone's got a £500 a bill per year, they only get £25 off. So you're giving 10 times the support to someone with a much bigger house and maybe more money to pay their bills.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the problem with this, and we see it criticised at other times when things aren't means tested, is that it's actually expensive to means test. So it's almost cheaper just to give it to everyone.
There is that trade-off.
Which is a bit perverse in a way.
Yeah, there's that trade-off between sort of how do I simply get something through, get it done in a way that seems fair and understandable to all, and how do I target it to people who need it the most. And I think, by and large, what's there is in the right spot. Don't forget, we have got one of the most comprehensive packages in the world. I've been in the energy market for nearly a decade now. We've done what we can to control the prices, right? We've got a price cap. Never thought that was going to happen. Now, even with a price cap, we've got help to pay the price that's regulated. So we're doing a lot already.
What I don't understand, right, explain this to us, because we can't get our heads around it at all. Centrica, which owns British Gas, which actually is worth saying does not put the price, or previously hasn't put the price right up to the price cap. They've been a few pence below the price cap. But Centrica has made from comparing it to the previous quarter or whatever it was 252 million or something they made in profit, now 1.3 billion. So why are they making so much more money if we're paying more because the base price has supposedly gone up?
So Centrica are the company who own British Gas. British Gas say we're making no money, there's no margin at all on your bills. That might be right. The money to be made is upstream. Centrica, who own British Gas, are fundamentally an energy supply business to energy companies. They give you the gas, they give you the electricity. So those guys are making money hand over fist. And I agree with you. At a time when we've got the worst possible cost of living crisis, how can it be that you've got a paradise, the best, bumper set of profits ever for Centrica?
So they're fleecing us, basically.
It's one of those where if you have an industry which is going well, everything seems fine. There's nothing about the margins which are bad. It's the fact they're making margins on a product which is essential to our living. That's what I think feels wrong for most people, myself included.
Do you think the government needs to take drastic action then on these energy suppliers, those guys that are making huge profits?
Well, we've already had a windfall tax, which is meant to generate about £5 billion. That's part of the reason we can actually go around and support the most vulnerable people in our communities. But can we do anything else? I don't know. Everywhere I look, I'm seeing drastic action that we haven't taken before. The one opportunity I would say is still there. I can't tell people to switch energy supplier. There's no not possible. All you can do to reduce your bill is reduce the energy that you use. The opportunity for Britons is to get things like energy efficiency and insulation measures at home. Don't forget, Britain has got the oldest housing stock in Europe. Now, that's great. We've built houses that last. We can be proud of that. But they're drafty. And there's a lot of support as well to get things like draft exclusion, insulation, and that can help people probably a lot more than they realise.
In terms of the future, everyone says, and I absolutely understand it, everyone says we need to go for renewables. If nothing else, it provides us with energy security, right? Totally get that. Why is it, because I've just had some stuff through from British Gas, why is it if I want to choose electricity, which is supposedly greener from them, they charge me more for it?
It's a good question. Fundamentally, they need to find that energy from different sources. And I think historically it might have been more expensive to find that. These days, I don't think that is necessarily the case. So people are going to take have an eye on that in the years to come. But you're absolutely right. The reason we've got soaring prices for our electricity is because gas is so expensive. A lot of people don't realise 40% of the electricity in this country is generated directly from gas. So we've got a problem. The gas is the expensive bit. The cheap bit is the renewables. It's the offshore wind, where Britain, by the way, is a world leader. So what we should be doing is investing more in keeping that stuff going, renewable, domestically generated energy, rather than the fossil fuels, which are expensive and come from parts of the world where you really can't count on solid supply.
While I think of it, I could keep you here all morning, Will, because I had lots of messages about it over the last couple of days, is the standing charges, right? Because what we're also seeing, a lot of people, is the standing charges are going up significantly. Now, why is that the case? That's not related to fuel usage, is it? So why are these companies putting the standing charge up?
I don't like it one bit, this. I smell a fish, right? A fish or a rat? What's the phrase?
Oh, a fish.
I smell a rat. There's something fishy and I can smell it.
Yeah.
What I don't like is the thing that we've just talked about is that people can control one aspect of their energy bill, which is how much they use. Now, if what you're paying for is the units rather than the fixed charge, then if you reduce your units, you're going to pay much less. If it's just, whether you like it or not, you get that standing charge, you haven't got that same opportunity to protect yourself. So I don't like it one bit, and I think the government should look at that.
Right, lovely stuff. Will, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I think we may have to have you back on a daily basis.
Yeah, very good, Will, making sense of it all. Thank you very much.
Well, it does, because, you've been emailing in about standing charges for ages now, and it's... I didn't have an answer for you. So
and those astronomical profits of those energy suppliers that shocked a lot of people on the front pages yesterday. So really good to have Will to kind of break that down for us. Lots of you have been in touch. We share a few of their thoughts. I just saw a good one relating to this.
Have you lost it now?
I've lost it now.
Yeah.
I was very prepared.
But you know what? It's interesting because you look at why does energy price, why do gas prices go up? Why do these things change? Because there are these pressures. The gas isn't actually costing any more, and it's all down to the fact that there's a shortage of gas, and it's the market economy, which, we as a capitalist society, we believe in the market economy. But it's because there's a shortage of supply and the need continues, the demand continues, that's why unit prices go up, which is why, therefore, companies like Centrica and Shell are making a fortune.
Huge
amount. But it does then beg the question, that's all well and good, and you can make more money out of it, but when people can't then actually pay the bills, at what point do they need to turn around and say, we are now going to make a contribution?
Yeah. Which is what's going to happen. As Dawn was saying earlier, so many people aren't going to be able to pay their bills. They're just simply not. Amy says, when are they going to bring benefits in line with the cost of living? All of my money is going on electricity and gas. It's a good point made there. Brian says, good morning. The first thing Lizzie should do when she gets into number 10, obviously talking about Liz Truss, first name terms. Lizzie. Yeah. It's obvious, Brian says, getting a handle on the cost of living crisis is paramount, as we're just discussing there. Then sorting out the EU in relation to Northern Ireland, the illegal migrant crisis the UK is facing, and then continue with the Levelling Up programme. That's from Brian.
And what Brian is saying there, I think, if you don't mind me saying, Brian, is it's hardball, isn't it? It's playing. It's almost getting rid of some of the diplomacy and trying to keep people out and just saying, right, this is what we were going to do. We're just going to do it, which is effectively what Boris Johnson said about Brexit. We're going to get on with it.
Get it done.
Is it that easy to do? I mean, I don't know. But I can see how that is very appealing to a lot of people who are absolutely sick to the back teeth of what is going on at the moment. Let's just do it. Let's just do something.
Yeah.
Politicians, of course, tend to take a sort of longer view and a bit more of a pragmatic view in a sense, but maybe we, the people, are fed up with that. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
It's going to be a wait, though, isn't it? 5th of September, new Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Long time. People are already struggling, isn't it? OK, lots more to come, including a look at the news and sport making the headlines.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw through Friday. Warm in the south, temperatures in the mid-20s to locally high 20s in places. Still warm and humid elsewhere, some brighter skies following on later on across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And that's where it's going to turn quite clear and chilly as we go into the overnight period. Elsewhere, though, we keep a lot of cloud, we keep this rain, and further wet weather pushes back into Wales through the small hours of Sunday. So here, turning into quite a wet night. Temperatures 18 or so in the south, very warm indeed. Further north, as I say, getting down into single figures in some of our more rural spots. So a bit of a north-south split through Sunday morning. Lots of bright and fine weather across the northern half of the country, but further south we've got the cloud and we've got these outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain welcome though across the southeast, where it's been a very dry July so far. And I think as we go through the rest of the day, we'll continue to see some bits and pieces of rain through much of the afternoon. Despite that though, still very warm and humid. Temperatures in the mid-20s quite widely. A little bit of a fresher feel further north, but still pleasant in that sunshine. Now, dry for most of us by Monday, the risk of some further wet weather on Tuesday, and all the while our temperatures staying on the warm side. Goodbye.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Colin's been in touch. Morning to you, Colin. Good to hear from you. Do you know what? I do sort of think, I hope the politicians are watching us and listening to us this morning. You better have be, because you lot have got
full of good ideas.
Some very good ideas. Colin says, I'm puzzled why nobody is asking farmers to grow more rapeseed, which can fuel any diesel engine. The processing plants are built in 6 months. I've worked on one. This would help the farmers and also the public subject to taxes. What a great idea. What a great... I knew someone once and they ran out of diesel in the middle of nowhere and there's no... and they went to the local shop and bought, 20 litres of sunflower oil or whatever and just chucked it in the tank. And it's not...
work?
Oh, yeah. It's not the best way to do it. I'm not saying it's good for the... It's probably not very good for your engine, but they had to get, they had to get to a petrol station.
Wow.
And so they did that. So rapeseed oil, yeah, if you can process it for fuel within 6 months, build a plant in 6 months. Yeah, I mean, surely that's a win-win, isn't it?
No, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. We're also talking about the hosepipe ban, which is affecting Hampshire and the Isle of Wight on Friday. A lot of it's actually down to leakage. I can't remember how many.
It was
90-something.
It was the best part of 100 million litres a day
on leaks
from southern water leaking, which is, I mean, frankly, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. When you think what we pay in water charges, and that money is meant to be used, or part of it at least, for sorting out the network and preventing it. I mean, it's criminal to be leaking so much water.
It's true. And Nigel pretty much echoes your point there, Stephen. He says civil engineering infrastructure is easy technology. It just needs the money, just needs the investment. And another person here hasn't given us their name. The UK needs a water grid, large diameter pipelines connecting the north and south of the UK. The north gets more water. It simply needs a pipeline to the south. That is the answer. This is what I mean. Full of good ideas.
Full of very good ideas.
We're running the country.
The nice thing is if you get your hands on northern water, I mean, particularly if you live sort of in the northwest, it's calcium-free.
Is it?
You get no hard water out of the water. It's so soft. You never get any deposits on taps, kettles, showers, nothing at all.
So lovely.
So I've got lovely skin.
Those northern years.
It is. Oh, the northern baths, you say.
Northern baths.
What it does for it. Now, not Aidan McGee is here. We're going to talk sport in a couple of minutes, Aidan. Someone's trying to sneak in behind you. Go away. I mean, because you're not a northerner, though, are you? You see?
No, I'm not, but I have...
Hate to say it's a disappointment.
A lot of business up north.
Oh, do you?
And, yeah, I know the north very, very well. I love living up there. I lived in Manchester for many years.
Oh, did you?
Most of my business is in Stoke on Trent, so I'm a Seven Water man.
Seven Water, yeah.
I got a bill from them yesterday, by the way.
Oh, very
nice. In terms of calcium... I thought that was good for you your teeth, isn't it? It's what we rely on calcium in teeth milk to improve your teeth. It's not good that it's not there in water. I know it makes your kettle difficult to boil.
The problem is if you live in a hard water area and you drink it, you sometimes see people if they don't go to the hygienist, which then costs a lot of money to go to the hygienist.
Calculus.
But they get those a lot of white in between their teeth, and that's
calculus.
Yeah. And
I know about dentistry.
Oh, you do know about dentistry. and that's a heck of a job to get out.
Yeah, it's almost like lime. It's the bath equivalent of limescale.
Yeah.
Disgusting, actually.
Yeah. You get it all over your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. But
so it's not nice.
But yeah, I'm a Seven Water man. But in terms of the north of England, yeah, I mean, I loved it. I didn't really want to come back, actually. I'm a huge, I over-invested there, really. I've got a lot of money invested up there, and I believe in the area, and I hope that the government can pull together and actually do the levelling up thing, because it needs to happen. But you're not going to achieve it, Stephen, by just building train lines and regional development agencies. You have to put meaningful employment in these areas. Unless you do that, you're not going to see a levelling up between the two areas.
Yeah. Just a quick thought before we head to another short break. Aidan, outfit. We're going. What sweet does it represent? I think it's really nice, but it's rhubarb and custard.
It's fruit salad.
You've gone fruit salad. Well, I'll tell you, my poll has closed on Twitter. Shall I tell you the final results? So there were 300 votes. Thank you to everyone that voted. 56% rhubarb and custard, 43% fruit salad. That was the...
the victory for the Dixon.
Stephen's won that one. Aidan, you're in the losing team.
Teeth, but I mean, you eat those fruit salads, and honestly, they can pull your fillings out, can't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's why they only cost a penny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
So we solved the mystery.
Those were the days, all that sort of stuff. Pear drops, cola cubes.
Oh, cola cubes. Oh, I like the flying saucers with the...
sherbet.
Yeah. Aniseed balls.
We're going to start something now on the favourite sweets.
Honestly, I loved aniseed balls.
What are those long red...
Dogs like those as well, don't they? Dogs like aniseed.
Long strawberry laces.
Strawberry laces.
Strawberry laces, that's them.
That's what they're called, yeah. You got it?
I think, honest to God. You get what you pay for, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I can say. I do apologise. Anyway, don't go anywhere, because Aidan's going to be back, actually, in a couple of minutes. And Stephanie's going to be joining us as well. Aidan's going to be talking to, amongst other people, the mum of English swimmer Adam Peaty ahead of his race tonight. So don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
"9:41, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie, and we've got all the sport and all the showbiz for you now with our delightful Stephanie Tetchy and Aidan McGee. Aidan, let's have a bit of kick off with a bit of sport, should we? And Ronaldo. But I love the fact Ronaldo is being very modest in his latest Instagram post or whatever it was.
Well, it's the great imponderable over the last month or so. Is he staying? Is he going? He's made it clear that he wants to go. He's also made it clear that he wants to go to a club playing in the Champions League. That's what he wants to do for the rest of his career. He hasn't got too long left. He's 37 years old. The science and the numbers say that he's probably not going to go on forever and ever. So he doesn't want to waste time playing for a club that isn't in the elite level of football competition. Now, yesterday, he's only trained for a couple of days. He's been off for a month for family reasons, in inverted commas.
Oh, yeah.
And so he hasn't actually trained much with United. He's travelled to Oslo today for a friendly against Atletico Madrid, one of the sides that he was rumoured to be joining in the last few days. He's also playing against Rayo Vallecano tomorrow at Old Trafford. Now, that's going to be an interesting litmus test to see how the fans take to him and what's been going on over the summer. It's been played out in quite an unedifying manner. But yesterday, one of his fans said yesterday, I think I've seen him for the last time in a Manchester United shirt. He then went on Instagram and said, "The King plays on Sunday."
Love it.
And that's the back page of The Sun, Martin Blackburn's piece today.
See, why is it? It's extraordinary. It's so incredibly arrogant.
Yes.
And yet I love it.
Is he known as the King, or is that his own?
No, he just called
himself the King.
Yeah,
Oh,
some people have certain
no.
nicknames that they ascribe to themselves, but that's probably...
And that's one of them.
Yes, exactly. I've not heard him called the King that much before, but he's obviously decided it suits
It's
him.
weird, because he does look a little bit like a young Elvis.
Yeah, he does a bit,
yeah. There's sort of that look about him.
I know, he didn't look like that back in 2003 when he first started playing. He looked a lot different, didn't he?
Oh, he did.
There's big braces on his...
yeah, he's had a bit of work done.
He has a little bit of work
fair
done.
enough.
But anyway,
fair enough, why not?
So but let's see how tomorrow the United fans take to him. I think he's earned enough credit in the bank over the years, given his legendary status at United. Even if they do give off a little bit to him tomorrow, it's only a short-term thing. He hasn't damaged his legacy at United. And I think ultimately what's driving this is that United can't get the player they want from Barcelona, Frenkie de Jong. He's owed a payment to leave Barcelona. He's not going to leave Barcelona until he gets that payment. He doesn't seem overly enamoured about going to Manchester United. He said the weather's a problem. He's not sure about the area. He thinks the clubs are running a little bit of a chaotic fashion. So in the event of not getting him, it kind of is important for Erik ten Hag, the new coach, to keep Cristiano Ronaldo. But if you're United... When I was growing up, Stephen, I'm sure you remember it as well. I know you're not a football man, but if you were United, you don't want to go anywhere else.
Oh no, it was the place to be.
Yeah,
if
you're living in the north of England, United were discussed. It was probably the biggest export in that area for one time, wasn't it? Yeah. So, but I'm going to go on to the Commonwealth Games now. Actually.
Oh yes, please do.
Because I've got a very special guest. I'm delighted to say it's the mother of the Olympic swimming legend Adam Peaty, Caroline Peaty. Good morning to you. Are you there?
I am.
Good to speak to you. Now, huge weekend for your boy in the pool this weekend. How's he feeling about the Commonwealth Games being in Birmingham? It caused a big stir this week with the opening ceremony, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I think he's really excited. He has been excited for a while because it's like on his home games. So, yeah, excited. We're all excited. And he's definitely ready.
And
Sorry about Monty.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. It's good to have the extra viewer. We're all aware of Adam's exploits in the pool, of course, but at 27, what is driving him on to more success now? Because, as I say, he's done so much. Is he as motivated as he was to achieve even more?
He's always ready to achieve more. That's Adam. He's never satisfied. He's always got to have more. So if he does get that 56 whatever time, then he'll go even lower. He'll keep on until he can go on no more.
And Caroline, tell me, what's it like as a mother rather, watching, manager as well, I guess. Same thing, yeah, may as well be.
Momager.
Tell me what it's like when your son's competing at elite level in the pool. What's it like for your nerves?
I still get nervous. I'm not so anxious prior to the actual entry to the pool. Then once we're at the pool, then my nerves start to kick in, and then my heart really does start to race once he's on the blocks.
And I was reading as well that fatherhood, he was worried that it might affect his performance in the pool. What adaptations has he made to his training regime and his performance in the pool so that he's not affected on the crucial days?
Well, on the early days, I think Mel, Ari and Adam worked around George's nighttime feeds, and when Adam could support Ari more. But as time goes on, he uses his time to have George. And Ari's very good as well because she works around Adam.
I want to ask you, Caroline, if I may, about Strictly Come Dancing before Christmas, because you felt Adam was robbed when he was eliminated from the programme. Is there any chance that he might come back for the Christmas edition? My colleague Stephanie Tetchy seems to think there might be a little bit of a chance sometime in future. That's the only way he can get back on the show. What do you think?
I have no idea. No idea. I know he thought it was really hard work.
But do you still think, with a bit of time having passed, do you still believe that he was robbed?
I think he could have gone a bit longer. You shouldn't get me started on this.
Come on, tell us what you think.
Yeah, I still think he was robbed because I thought he was better than some.
All right, well, let's hope he does a bit of dancing in the pool today.
Too.
Just finally, we've got the Lionesses playing tomorrow, the England Euro final against Germany at Wembley. Just a word of support for the Lionesses. Can they do it? Can they finally bring it home tomorrow at Wembley?
Of course they can.
You reckon? Can I have a score prediction from you, please, Caroline?
Pardon?
Can I have a score prediction for you? Don't say penalties, please.
Oh, let's go. Let's go 4-2.
Oh, now that's interesting, Caroline, because Liz Kershaw, who comes on this programme, who you probably know, she's put a bet on for 4-2.
Oh.
4-2.
Yeah, she's put a bet on for 4-2, so she'd be in for a bit of money if she wins that. So that could be a good sign that you've gone for that as well. Lovely stuff.
I hope she wins.
Caroline, it's great to speak to you. We hope Adam pulls it off in the pool today, and it's great to see you. And as I say, we hope your prediction for the Lionesses comes off tomorrow as well.
Thank you.
Oh, nice. Lovely. I tell you what, you can't beat the support of your mum.
I don't know. I'll just talk about being a mum, though. How would you feel if you had kids and they were in the pool or they were competing? How do you think you'd feel at home?
Terrified.
Yeah, I would as well.
Yeah, very nervous.
Yeah.
Bother watching. I do know parents of footballers who can't watch their kids compete.
Yeah.
Let's find out the result later on.
I think you'd be very involved. I think you'd be on the side of the pool.
You'd be in the pool.
Yeah, you would. You'd be like, come on.
Be nerve-wracking.
Don't you think?
Be nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I think.
Now, Stephanie Tetchy, my queen. It's good to see you this morning. Can we talk? Because I did watch it last night. Got to say, Neighbours.
Yeah.
Go on, what did you think of it? Because it was corny as anything, but really nice.
No, I think it was just one of those episodes that will stay in people's hearts forever. Like, it was such an emotional reunion, seeing Kylie, Jason come back to the square, and Kylie was wearing her denim overalls as well. Toad finally got married. So it was really good, and you could just actually see, like, they've done 8,903 episodes.
Ooh, wow.
So for them to go down memory lane or Ramsey Street's memory lane, it was incredible to see all of that.
I didn't realise, Steph, how much it was adapted over the years for an English audience, because it was initially quite popular in Australia back in the late 80s, and then it started really finding its feet in England in around about 87, 88. It had the afternoon afternoon edition, and then it had
twice a day.
Yeah, had a repeat in the evening as well. But I didn't realise. I mean, it was really adapted for a British audience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a big hit with English audience because it just provided that form of escapism because all we had was EastEnders, Coronation Street, and then you just had this Australian soap coming through. So it's one of those things, it always has been a hit with it. And I do feel like Neighbours will come back in the future. I have a feeling, after yesterday, I was like, there must be a spin-off episode or a reunion episode that will happen in the future. I don't think it's the end.
I tell you what, I did find out the most tear-jerky bit was that bizarre cameo that hasn't been mentioned. Madge Bishop was just as if
she was just in the corner,
as if like a sort of ghost figure.
Yeah, I loved that, and it was like she was doing all like the voiceover to it as well about the people they had lost. So I thought that was a nice touch as well.
There's a quiz question for you. And this is not to do with what I learned in the last few days, but just
here we go. Brace yourself.
Who was the first English woman to appear as a character in Neighbours? And I want the character's name in Neighbours, not the actress's name.
Don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Mrs. Mangle.
She's never English.
Born in Grimsby in 1924. Vivian Gray. She actually came back to England right at the end of her career and lived out her final years in Shore-and-by-Sea in the Sussex.
Did she?
Oh.
Having spent her entire professional career,
He's after your job, Steph.
I love the fact they still got the picture of Mrs. Mangle hanging up in Jane's house. Yeah, Helen Daniels did that.
That's right,
supposedly.
Steph, we've got to talk about what's on the front page of most of the newspapers. It's, of course, the Agatha Christie trial came to its conclusion yesterday, didn't it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I know you, as journalists, we're supposed to say quite impartial over these things, but I actually do feel like the right verdict did come out through this case. In this whole case, Colleen has been asking for this case to be settled out of court, and in a statement she put out, it's like a lot of money's been wasted on this in a time of hardship. £3 million. I know Rebecca's married to a footballer, but I'm sorry, I don't know how he must be feeling knowing all that money is going to be covering her bills, Colleen's bills. Like, rumour has it could go up to £12 million. And that is a lot of money on a case which could have been settled out of court. It hasn't made Rebecca look in a good light at all.
It's going to affect her going forward as well, isn't it?
It will.
Because this is cast doubt over her integrity.
Definitely. And, you know, even the judge said to her secretly, can we settle this out of court just to save your reputation? And as with most of these things, it's all about the big interview, but actually Colleen's been secretly filming her journey to the High Court and to the court case, so there will be a documentary that Colleen will put out eventually. They haven't got a broadcaster out at the moment, signed and dealed.
They're looking for actors, aren't they?
Oh, gosh. I think
it's drama on Channel 4, isn't there?
It's going to be a real documentary, so it'll be quite interesting to hear what Colleen actually has to say or see her journey as well.
Yeah, well, that actually will be an interest. I mean, I shy away from these sort of things, but it'll be quite an interesting watch. Look, I said that you were my queen. You're not really. What about Queen Bee?
Oh, God.
Because I know you're the world's biggest Beyonce fan.
Biggest Queen Bee's fan, and she released her album on Thursday night. It was leaked 2 days early, so she thanked fans who actually waited until midnight on Thursday to listen to the album. It's a masterpiece. Anything Beyonce does is a work of art, but specifically with this album, it's 16 tracks, and it's dedicated to the LGBT community. She's dedicated it to her Uncle Tony, who said was quite inspirational in her music journey. So, as we can see with these pictures, she's very ballroom, very glitz and glamour with it.
Yeah, but it's a 3-act project, she says.
So 1 act is dedicated to her children, 1 act's dedicated to Jay-Z, and 1 act's dedicated to herself and the community.
And she can do no wrong. I mean, like you're saying, I mean, I know you're a big fan, but literally anything that comes out, she's just got this massive fan base. You've got the Beehive, right?
Yeah.
The Beehive are right there, they're behind her, and it's always incredible,
She's a perfectionist.
Yeah.
She's, like, I think with Beyonce, like, she takes her time. Like, her last album was released 6 years ago.
Wow. Oh, Lemonade, 6 years ago.
Lemonade, yeah.
Oh, Stephen, you're a big fan.
I tell you what, sometimes pop stars get on my pip end, in a way, but then you get people like Beyonce, who is just, whether you like her music or not, it is pure talent.
Yeah.
There will be a song for everybody on this album.
Yeah.
I haven't listened yet. I'm going to have to do that. But you are right that she's a perfectionist. It wasn't for Glastonbury. It was like a 1 minute 30 performance or something silly. And she practiced for about 4 months for it. She's incredible.
You always see her incredible journeys. I love it.
Look, quick word on Will Smith. He's made his first sort of on-video, on-camera apology for the slap.
Yes, he has. So yesterday afternoon, I was at my desk. I was like, "Oh, Will Smith's just popped up on Instagram," because he's been very quiet on social media since the slap in March. He released a 5-minute video saying that he's been working on himself over the past 2-3 months, trying to heal himself and just really contemplating and reflecting on the situation. He said that he apologised to Chris Rock, but he hasn't managed to get through to Chris Rock. He doesn't want to talk to him as yet. And also, he just kind of dispelled a couple of the myths of what happened. He said, you know, his wife didn't force him to go up on stage. It was very much him, but he does regret what happened.
Do you think this is going to be enough for him? Because his reputation has been so badly damaged. Is this going to help?
I don't think Will Smith can ever be Will Smith anymore without the slap. I think the slap's always going to follow him wherever he goes.
Career-defining in some way.
Yeah, but as he said at the end of the video yesterday, he hopes we can all be best friends again. And he's just got that lovable character about him, which I think will help ease the blow.
Let's hope so. We are out of time, you two. Yeah. As always, it's a job. We'll see you both
you.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
So that's it from the family for this morning. We're back tomorrow from 6 o'clock, so we'll see you then.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Saturday morning forecast. It's a warm and a humid one as we start the weekend. Dry across the south at the moment, but elsewhere we've got rain spreading in. And that's all down to this weather front that's been pushing its way in through the course of last night. And with that, we'll see some slightly stronger winds, but the main emphasis is going to be on some pretty heavy rain. So already across much of Scotland, the north of England and Northern Ireland, we've got that rain falling, and it's going to be a wet morning here with some further heavy bursts of rain through the day. It will begin to peter out through the day, but we will also see some rain pushing into Wales, affecting perhaps the Peak District as well. But elsewhere further south, it stays dry with some spells of sunshine around, albeit a little bit cloudier than what we saw